Chapter 14:12. Last year, when Li Zixuan was making telegraphs and voltaic batteries in the workshop, he had used a charcoal bamboo wire to conduct an experiment. The moment the wire was energized, it would emit a bright light. However, it was only for a moment. After that moment of light, the bamboo wire would burn into ashes due to heat. Although the experiment failed, it at least proved that the charcoal bamboo wire could be used as a lamp wire. As long as it was not exposed to oxygen, it could be used to ensure its lifespan. Today, Li Zixuan used candles to consume oxygen to ensure that there was no oxygen in the light bulb. In this way, the light bulb made from charcoal bamboo wire could be used for a very long time. In 1854, a German clockmaker, Henry Gerber, who had immigrated to America, used a piece of charcoal bamboo wire placed in a vacuum glass bottle to make the first practical electric light bulb. It lasted for 400 hours, but he did not apply for a patent in time. In 1874, two electrical engineers in Canada applied for a patent for an electric light bulb. Nitrogen gas was placed under a glass bulb, and the carbon rod was energized to emit light. However, they did not have enough money to continue perfecting this invention, so they sold the patent to Edison in 1875. After Edison bought the patent, he tried to improve the lamp wire. Finally, in 1880, he made a charcoal bamboo wire lamp that could last for 1,200 hours. This was already quite impressive. One must know that the lifespan of a tungsten lamp was only around 1,500 hours. Before discovering and mining tungsten ores, using charcoal bamboo wire to replace tungsten wire was undoubtedly the wisest choice. Xiao Xian, I brought the batteries. Is 5 enough? According to Li Zixuan's instructions, Yan Xiaoning carried 5 voltaic batteries and walked into the laboratory. Li Zixuan frowned and said, "It shouldn't be enough, but let's try it out first." The voltaic batteries made by the workshop to energize telegraphs had a voltage of about 1 volt and a current of about 500 milliamperes. 5 of them in series only had a voltage of about 5 volt. However, the light bulb in his hand was not small. The charcoal bamboo wire inside was wound into a spiral shape, so the length was longer and the resistance was higher. 5 volts and 500 milliamperes of current were probably not enough to light it up. After saying that, Li Zixuan connected the 5 batteries in series. Then, from the top of the light bulb, he pulled out 2 copper wires. One end was connected to the positive electrode, the other end was connected to the negative electrode. Suddenly, the charcoal bamboo wire in the light bulb lit up faintly. This light was not as fleeting as the previous experiment. Instead, it lasted for a long time. Seeing this, Li Zixuan could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. It's lit. It's lit. Yamacho. The light bulb is really lit. In the laboratory, Mo Lingwei saw the faint light from the electric lamp and couldn't help but cheer excitedly. Yup. It just feels like the brightness is not enough. Yan Xiaoning looked up and down for a while and said regretfully, "That's because the voltage is too low. If we increase the voltage, it will definitely be brighter. At least, it will be brighter than a candle." Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Yup. Then can't we just ask Xiaoningzi to bring a few more batteries? Xiaoningzi, go quickly." Mo Lingwei pouted and ordered Yan Xiaoning. Okay. Then I'll go get 5 more batteries." In the face of the goddess's will, how could Yan Xiaoning dare to disobey? He quickly stood up and was about to walk out of the house. Speaking of which, the voltaic batteries made of salt water had a very low efficiency. Therefore, every voltaic battery was integrated with many small compartments to ensure that the voltage of each battery could be used. In this way, the weight of each battery was not light. The 5 batteries added together weighed about 10 kilograms. Speaking of which, it was quite difficult for Yan Xiaoning. Seeing this, Li Zixuan quickly said, "Forget it. There's no need. Since the light bulb can keep on, it means that our idea of making the light bulb is correct." It won't be too late to do the experiment when the dam is opened and the generator is officially generating electricity the day after tomorrow. Taking advantage of this time, we need to make a few sets of light bulbs with different voltages and leave them for the experiment with the generator and transformer the day after tomorrow. After all, no one knows what the voltage of the generator is. What's the voltage after the transformer conversion? Speaking of which, what did the Academy lack the most? That would be all kinds of instruments and measuring tools. First of all, due to the limitations of the technological conditions, the various measuring tools in ancient times were actually not accurate. Although the precision of things like rulers, scales, and measuring buckets could meet the daily needs, if used for precision manufacturing, it was far from enough. Now, because of the Ba hydropower station, Lantion County would be able to use electricity very soon. When it came to electricity, it would require measuring instruments such as voltmeters, ammeters, and ohmmeters. These things were not easy to manufacture. Furthermore, the unit standards for these new physical quantities had to be carefully considered and approved by the majority. Li Zixuan planned to gather the elites of the Academy and establish the Tang Dynasty Metrology Institution to unify the old units of measurement and set up a new standard for the new physical quantities. In addition, the measuring tools and measuring instruments used in engineering in the future would require the Tang Dynasty Metrology Institution to make a standard instrument. All the related instruments would have to be calibrated according to this standard instrument to ensure that the error was within an acceptable range. After the Tang Dynasty Metrology Institution was established, Li Zixuan could continue to use the modern units of measurement such as meter, kilometer, gram, kilogram, volt, ampere, watt, kilowatt, and so on. Furthermore, to engage in precision manufacturing in the Tang Dynasty, the first step was not to build machines, but to unify the measurement standards and create more precise measuring tools. Only then could they create more precise machine tools and more precise parts. There was a saying that went, "A little mistake can lead to a great error." This saying was most suitable in the field of precision manufacturing. Oh, that's fine too. But Yamacho, how can we make the voltage of the lamp filament different? Mo Lingwei nodded thoughtfully, then asked doubtfully. Yan Xiaoning also looked at Li Zixuan. Mo Lingwei didn't understand the electricity part of the textbook. If Mo Lingwei didn't understand it, he naturally wouldn't understand it either. Li Zixuan thought for a while and explained, under the same voltage, the lower the resistance of the filament, the higher the current passing through it. For example, if we connect a wire directly to the positive and negative ends of a battery, although the voltage of the battery is small, the resistance of the wire is close to zero. The current passing through it will be infinite, and the temperature of the wire and the battery will increase rapidly. Therefore, the higher the resistance, the higher the voltage it can withstand. The reason why I made the filament into a spiral shape is to increase the length of the filament. The longer the filament, the higher the resistance. On the other hand, by making the filament into a spiral shape, it is equivalent to an inductor. In a DC stabilized circuit, the inductor is equivalent to a short circuit, and the resistance is negligible. But in a sinusoidal alternating current, the inductor will form a certain resistance to the current. There will be voltage on both sides, and there will also be current passing through. The lower the frequency of the sinusoidal alternating current, the lower the resistance of the inductor, which is equivalent to a low-pass filter. Therefore, by making the filament into a spiral shape, it is more beneficial to increase the voltage of the bulb. Mo Lingwei listened and digested it seriously for a while, then nodded and said, "Yes, Yamacho, I understand. Then let me make the electric lamps with different voltage values." She saw the whole process of Li Zixuan making the electric lamp. Overall, it wasn't difficult, so she took the initiative to ask. Li Zixuan nodded and stood up. "That's good. Then I'll have to trouble Ink Girl." After he finished speaking, he glanced at Yan Xiaoning and walked out of the door. Way air, I'll help you. Humph. Who needs your help? No. You see, we can't let a girl like you do this kind of rough work, right? That makes sense. Outside the house, Li Zishuan heard the conversation between the two and could not help but shake his head. He sighed as he walked. Sigh. What a pair of quarrelsome lovers. Open the gate. Let the water flow. 2 days later. All the construction of the canals and the installation of the water wheel in Lantian County had been completed. In Lantian County, hundreds of thousands of acres of fertile land that had been dry for more than half a month could finally be nourished again. Next to the Ba River Dam, under Li Zishuan's command, a gate of the dam was opened. The surging river water in the dam rolled down, and the water flowed directly into the canals through the water wheel. Then, it flowed along the canals happily and surged forward. There's water! There's water! There's finally water flowing into the fields. That's great! That's great! Marquis is merciful. Otherwise, with this year's drought, our crops might not be harvested at all. Yes, yes. I heard that Marquis spent hundreds of thousands of strings of cash to build this dam. And this canals, I heard that the cement used in it was all provided by Marquis himself. This stuff can't even be bought outside, but Marquis used it to build our canals. We must remember Marquis's kindness for the rest of our lives. That's a must. To have such a good Marquis, our ancestors must have burned incense to thank them. Whoever doesn't remember Marquis's kindness is an ingrate and should be poked in the back. Looking at the large amount of water flowing into the newly built cement canals, the onlookers on the banks of the Ba River burst into cheers. County Magistrate he, immediately send people to each village to see if there's any problem with the water. If there's any problem, report to me immediately. On the bank, Li Zishuan ordered with his hands behind his back. It was said that Lantian County was the first county around Chang, a city to divert water into the fields. The main reason was that the canals were built early and the canals were completed early. And because of the dam, Lantian County had an abundant water source, which provided a huge convenience. So, while other counties were busy building canals and loading water trucks, Lantian County had already diverted the water from the Ba River Dam into the fields. County Magistrate He's face was glowing. Lantian County was the first county to divert water into the field. As a county magistrate, he was also proud. In the end, it was not in vain that he had led all the officials in the county yamen to work hard for the past few days. Hearing Li Zishuan's order, he quickly cupped his hands and said, Marquis, don't worry. I've already arranged for people to be stationed at each village. They will be here soon to report the situation to me. Li Zishuan nodded with satisfaction and said, Not bad. Then report to me later. Yamacho, a generator has started operating. The relays and transformers have been installed. Do you want to take a look? At this moment, Mo Huai and Mo Lingwei walked over from the embankment of the dam and said to Li Zishuan, Try. Of course I have to try. Li Zishuan was shocked. Opening the dam to release water and irrigate the fields was important, but whether the generator could generate electricity was even more important. This was related to whether Lantian County could be directly brought from the age of agriculture to the age of electricity. He took 2 steps forward and said, Mr. Mo, in a while, use the relay switch to cut off the generator's output power. Then, connect the lights in parallel and turn on the relay switch to see if the lights can be turned on properly. The generator outputs high-voltage alternating current. If you're not careful, your life will be in danger. You must be careful when using electricity. It's best to wear insulated rubber gloves. Mo Huai nodded solemnly and said, Yamacho, I understand. After saying that, he turned and walked toward the dam's control room. After a while, under the curious gazes of the surrounding people, someone began to set up electric wires by the riverbank. There were more than 10 fist-sized glass balls on the wires. The crowd couldn't help but discuss. What is Marquis doing? These wires don't look like hemp rope. Of course they're not hemp rope. The wires are wrapped in rubber. As for what's inside, that's unknown. Rubber? This thing was very precious. I wonder what's inside. Marquis is willing to spend so much. I want to know what those glass balls are for. I feel like Marquis is going to do something new again. The surrounding people discussed animatedly. The Yenhuang College teachers who came to watch the ceremony were all clenching their fists tightly. They prayed in their hearts that the first generator experiment would succeed. The construction of the generator and the power station could not be done without the silent efforts of the teachers of the college. The dam could be built by the people as long as the drawings were drawn. However, the hydropower station was different. It required the guidance of someone who was proficient in this field. As the first trump card project of Yenhuang College, the teachers of the college, especially the teachers of the physics department, had contributed a lot of energy to the construction of the hydropower station over the past few months. As for whether it would succeed or not, it would depend on the experiment today. Yamacho, everything is ready. Do you want to turn on the switch and turn on the lights? An hour later, Mo Huai walked over and cupped his hands towards Li Zixuan as he asked, "Turn on the lights. Be careful." Li Zixuan secretly clenched his hands and nodded. He was nervous and excited at the same time. Chapter 14-13. Master, let me do it. Lantian County, in front of the Ba River Dam. Li Zixuan ordered, and was about to turn on the relay switch for the generator's output power when Mo Chue stepped forward and cupped his fists at Mo Huai. The ancients were particular about respecting their teachers. Li Zixuan said that the generator produced high-voltage electricity, and any carelessness could cost one's life. That was why Mo Chue volunteered. Mo Huai smiled and immediately refused. No need. This electromagnetic relay uses a weak current to control a strong current. It won't be dangerous. Besides, if something happens, my reaction speed is much faster than yours. Li Zixuan nodded when he heard that. The electromagnetic relay was indeed an automatic switch that used a smaller current and a lower voltage to control a larger current and a higher voltage. There was no danger in itself. This kind of switch was often used in strong current working environment. That was why Li Zixuan had asked Mo Huai and the others to make this thing in advance more than half a month ago. After Mo Huai finished speaking, he turned and walked toward the dam. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the electric lights on the riverbank suddenly lit up, but soon there was the sound of explosions. 4 light bulbs exploded. Fortunately, Li Zixuan was prepared and did not let anyone stand near the light bulbs. Otherwise, the glass shards that shot out in all directions would have pierced their flesh and would have either died or been injured. However, the other 6 light bulbs lit up normally. Other than the difference in brightness, there was nothing unusual about them. The light bulbs are on. Our generator is a success. Mo Huai looked at the 6 light bulbs and said excitedly, "Oh, it's a success. We've succeeded." The teachers of the Yenhuang Academy burst into loud cheers at this moment. They had succeeded. Under Li Zixuan's guidance, they had successfully created electricity. This achievement was enough to go down in history. When the onlookers on the shore saw the transparent glass ball suddenly emit a strong light, they could not help but exclaim, "Quick! Look! That glass ball is glowing! Oh my God! Marquis made a glowing glass ball. This is amazing!" No. It seemed that Marquis wasn't the only one who did it. All the teachers from Yenhuang College seemed to have participated as well. Yenhuang College is indeed a place of immortals. The people who come from there are indeed different. They all have immortal means. Isn't it? Other people could turn stone into gold, but the teachers from Yenhuang College were able to turn a non-luminous glazed ball into a luminous pearl. It's truly the work of a god. Li Zixuan nodded with satisfaction when he heard the cheers of the academy and the exclamations of the surrounding people. He said to Mo Huai and the others, "Although only a few light bulbs have been lit, this shows that our thinking and methods are correct. We have already taken a small step towards success. Next, with everyone's joint efforts, we will definitely be able to make the electricity generated by the Ba hydropower station supply the entire Lantian. Today's era of electricity will be started by us." "Good." Yamacho said it well. "Our Yanhuang College will be the first to create electricity and let all the people use it." "Haha. With this electric light, you won't find the light dim when you read at night." "That's right. With the electric light, the academy can let the students attend classes at night in the future." The teachers from the academy cheered loudly. What did cultured people like to do the most? Needless to say, it was definitely reading. At this moment, most of the teachers saw the electric light and couldn't help but think of reading. When Li Zixuan heard this, he couldn't help but observe a moment of silence for the students because the evening self-study era of Yanhuang College was about to begin. It might be difficult for the power of this hydropower station to supply the entire Lantian County, but it was not a problem to supply Yanhuang College on Yunshan Mountain. At that time, the students would definitely have to start the evening self-study at night. Thinking back to when Li Zixuan was in school, the evening self-study was his most painful memory. Obviously, he was tired from the day and wanted to rest, but the teacher didn't let him. Instead, he had to suffer in the several hours of evening self-study. Just thinking about it made him suffer. Now, he could finally pass this sin on to his students. This feeling of gloating, humph, you brat. Fortunately, I usually treat you generously, but now that you have something good here, you forget about me. Just when everyone was feeling very proud, Li Erlong walked with 2 guards behind him. Unknowingly, he walked behind Li Zixuan and then said in a bad mood. Li Zixuan was shocked. He secretly wondered how old Li could appear and disappear so mysteriously. This person was scaring people to death. "This subject greets your majesty." Li Zixuan quickly came back to his senses and bowed. "Greetings, your majesty." "Greetings, your majesty." The shore of Ba River, which was noisy just now, immediately quieted down. The teachers from Yanhuang College and the onlookers all bowed to Li Erlong. Li Erlong waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite. Today, I came only to see the electricity produced by Yanhuang College." He had also received news yesterday that the Ba River Dam would be opened today, and Li Zixuan would use this opportunity to test the power generation function of the generator. As for the new electric light bulb, it was an unexpected surprise to him. Li Zixuan cupped his hands and said, "Why did your majesty say that?" This subject originally wanted to wait for the generator power to be stable and then connect the wires to the palace. At that time, the palace can also use electric lights. The relevant technology is not mature yet, and the palace is an important place in the empire. This subject does not dare to take the risk. These words were obviously nonsense that he had spouted on the spot. But to be honest, Li Erping had always treated him well. His stubborn temper had caused him quite a bit of trouble, but Li Erping had always forgiven him. Not only that, he had become a marquis at such a young age. In addition to his official position, he had also received many other rewards, such as mineral resources. Even if Li Erping didn't mention these things, Li Zixuan would still be grateful. It was said that the imperial family was the most ruthless, but Li Erlong was impeccable to his subject. Most of the time, Li Zixuan was more like an elder in his heart, not the ruler of a country. Therefore, when the power generation technology of the hydropower station matured, it would definitely be connected to the palace. Hearing this, Li Erlong nodded in satisfaction and said, It doesn't matter if it's true or not, but with your words, Zhen's heart feels a little better. This electric light can really be called a divine object. This thing is brighter than candles and oil lamp. With it, the night can be as bright as day. Oil lamps burn oil and candles burn wax. Could it be that this electric light burns electricity? Li Zishuan nodded and replied, replying to Your Majesty, this electric light consumes electricity, and does not burn electricity. This subject has said before that in the universe, energy is conserved. The reason why this electric light can emit light is nothing more than the conversion of electricity into light energy. Electricity? Light energy? Li Erlong muttered and then asked doubtfully, could it be that this light has energy? This was the first time he heard the term light energy. In his opinion, sunlight could be seen every day, so how could there be energy? Li Zishuan smiled and said, Your Majesty, this light is originally a type of energy. According to this subject's knowledge, the reason why this plant can grow is because it relies on the energy brought by sunlight. It combines a component in the air with water to form organic matter that is beneficial for plant growth. Therefore, plant growth generally cannot be separated from water and sunlight. Li Erlong raised his eyebrows in surprise. This was the first time he heard that plants relied on the absorption of light energy to grow. Although he was somewhat skeptical, he did not delve deeper into this issue. He turned to look at the electric light that was hung up. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it. He could not help but say, good stuff, good stuff. Quickly set up all your power stations. We look forward to the citizens of Tang Empire being able to use electricity and electric lights. At that time, you will become a subject that brings light to the citizens of this world, and we will become an emperor that brings light to the citizens of this world. Ha ha! Li Zishuan bowed and said, this subject obeys Your Majesty. Bringing light to the people of this world, what a heavy and great ideal. At this time, Li Erlong looked at the surging river water in the ditch and said with emotion, back then, you spent a huge amount of money to build this dam. Who knows how many people talked about you being a wastrel behind your back. Today, no one would have thought that because of this dam, hundreds of thousands of acres of fertile land and tens of thousands of citizens of Lantian County were saved. Today, Lantian County has become the first county in the entire Guangzhou region to successfully divert water from a ditch. Marquis Yong-un, your contributions cannot go unnoticed. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Your Majesty's words are too serious. The reason why Lantian County was able to successfully divert water so quickly was definitely not because of this subject's efforts alone. The officials of Lantian County and the tens of thousands of citizens of the 50 over villages of Lantian County all contributed greatly. Without their hard work and rushing work day and night, even if this subject had the ability to reach the heavens, it would be impossible for this subject to clear the ditch and successfully divert water in such a short time. When County Magistrate he and the rest heard Li Zishuan mention themselves in front of Li Erlong, all of them stood up straight. Their hearts were also in their throats, and they were extremely excited. When Li Erlong heard this, he looked indifferently at County Magistrate he and the rest of the people standing by the side. He nodded lightly and said, Who has contributed and who has not contributed, we know in our hearts. However, this cement ditch of yours does indeed look much better than normal ditches. If it wasn't for the limited amount of cement produced by your workshop, we would have planned to promote this cement ditch in other places. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Your Majesty, rest assured. In less than 2 years, the cement produced by Lantian County will definitely be able to satisfy the needs of the entire Tang Empire. Here, he played a little trick. He said Lantian County and not the workshop of Strange Interest Pavilion. The deeper meaning in his words could only be understood by those who were as meticulous as hair. Good. Then we shall wait for your good news. Hee. Shouting, did you quarrel with Ink Girl again recently? After Li Erlong left, the riverbank of Ba River also began to clean up the area. The light bulbs and wires were all removed. Otherwise, if some naughty child accidentally touched the wires, the consequences would be unimaginable. On the way back to Cloud Mountain, Li Zixuan walked to Yan Xiaoning's side and asked with a smile. No, no. We are all fine. Yan Xiaoning was startled and quickly replied. Li Zixuan obviously did not believe him and said, He. Xiaoning, why aren't you telling me the truth? Both of you are straightforward people. How can I not tell if you are quarreling or not? Tell me. Maybe I can help you and give you some advice. Otherwise, if that girl goes crazy, you won't be able to afford it. Don't blame me for not reminding you when that time comes. Sigh. Nothing can be hidden from your eyes. Yan Xiaoning paused and couldn't help but sigh and said, Actually, it's not a big deal. Maybe I said something wrong earlier and made her angry? She should be fine in 2 days. Li Zixuan asked curiously, Said something wrong? What did you say? Yan Xiaoning thought for a while as if he was recalling something. After a while, he said, That day, Wei Er suddenly told me that she had a dream the night before. She dreamed that there was a pair of intertwined branches growing in her courtyard. Intertwined branches? Could it be that the Mo family's girl wanted to get married? Li Zixuan couldn't help but be surprised. Intertwined branches referred to a kind of plant where the branches of 2 trees grew together. It was also known as the acacia tree, the husband and wife tree, and the life and death tree. It was a metaphor for the love between husband and wife. In the natural world, this kind of tree was quite rare. Then what did you say to her at that time? Li Zixuan asked. Yan Xiaoning scratched his head awkwardly and said, At that time, I just remembered that I had a strange dream the night before, so she asked me to tell her about it. I clearly remember that before I told her about it, her face was full of happiness. But after I finished, she immediately turned hostile and wanted to kill me in the Cloud Mountain. Li Zixuan became more and more curious. Wasn't it just telling each other about the dream? Why did they quarrel with each other? So he quickly asked again, Xiaoning, what dream did you have that night? Yan Xiaoning said weakly, I dreamed that Wei Er was eating shit. I couldn't stop her. Xiao Xian, don't you think it's strange? When Li Zixuan heard this, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He thought to himself, although I know that Yan Xiaoning is a straight man, I didn't expect you to be this straight. You really dare to say anything? After you said this sentence, Ink Girl didn't kill you. You're really lucky. After a long silence, Li Zixuan sighed faintly and said, No, Xiao Xian. I was just telling the truth. I didn't deliberately distort the truth. Why are you blaming me? Yan Xiaoning said anxiously. Li Zixuan said angrily, If I were Ink Girl, even if I didn't beat the shit out of you, I would have said sorry, I stole your food. What do you mean? Ch. Xiao Xian, are you scolding me? Yan Xiaoning was stunned when he heard this, but he quickly reacted and immediately jumped up. Li Zixuan sighed helplessly. No matter what, Yan Xiaoning was still his brother. If he needed to help him, he had to help him. Thus, he said with a serious expression, Xiaoning, before the 2 of you fell out, did you and Miss Mo experience anything out of the ordinary? No. We usually only wander around the Cloud Mountain. What's different about it? Yan Xiaoning shook his head without thinking. Li Zixuan rolled his eyes and said, Think about it carefully. It doesn't matter if you encountered anything unusual. Yan Xiaoning frowned and fell into deep thought. After a while, he suddenly said loudly, Oh, I remember now. The day before, I went to the Han family manor with Wei Er and happened to bump into Xiao Xian's guard, Pang Feiji, and his fiancée. At that time, they were busy preparing for the wedding. He even invited us to attend the wedding banquet together on the day of the wedding. But Wei Er seemed a little unhappy at that time. That's right. Li Zixuan clapped his hands and then said something earth-shattering. Xiaoning, it's not that I want to criticize you, but Miss Mo and you are congenial. The 2 of you have been together for so long, so you know each other's backgrounds and understand each other's intentions. Now that she saw someone else getting married, Ink Girl definitely wants to get married too. I didn't expect you to be so unromantic. No wonder she was so angry. Chapter 14:14. Get married? After hearing Li Zixuan say that Mo Lingwei wanted to get married, Yan Xiaoning couldn't help but be startled. He frowned and fell silent. Humans weren't plants and couldn't be emotionless. No matter how low his EQ was, he could still feel Mo Lingwei's feelings for him. However, even though they usually got along well, it was hard for Yan Xiaoning to accept it when it came to marriage. Or rather, his brain couldn't wrap itself around it and he wasn't mentally prepared. Seeing this, Li Zixuan frowned slightly and said, Xiaoning, do you want to let Ink Girl down? Even though Ink Girl usually orders you around, she never allows anyone to speak ill of you behind your back. Everyone can see her feelings for you. If you let her down, I'll be the first to look down on you as a brother. Yan Xiaoning quickly waved his hand and said, No. How would I dare to let her down? I'm just worried that if I marry her, with her personality, I'll be bullied by her every day in the future. Moreover, her father's martial arts are so high, even on par with yours. If I fight back when she bullies me, won't her father tear me apart when he finds out? Li Zixuan couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this. What kind of twisted logic was this? Did the fact that your father-in-law was too powerful become the reason why you don't dare to get married? If Mo finds out, he'll definitely come over and kill you right now. Then, Xiaoning, do you dare to fight back when Ink Girl bullies you? After a moment of silence, Li Zixuan asked. Yan Xiaoning was startled and immediately answered, A good man doesn't fight with women. I, Yan Xiaoning, am a man. Why would I stoop to the level of a woman? Li Zixuan smiled and asked again, If another woman bullies you like Ink Girl, would you be willing? Yan Xiaoning glared and said, Xiao Xian, what are you talking about? I don't even know other women. Why would they bully me for no reason? Besides, I'm not a masochist. After hearing what you said, I'll have to endure anyone's anger, right? Let me tell you that's not it. Can. At this moment Li Zixuan clapped his hands and laughed. Haha, to sum up what you said just now, you're willing to be bullied by Miss Mo, but you're unwilling to be bullied by other girls. Since that's the case, why are you still hesitating, Xiaoning? Hurry up and marry Ink Girl. Otherwise, if your father takes a fancy to another noble young lady and proposes marriage to her, then wouldn't you be unwilling for the rest of your life? Yan Xiaoning was stunned. Although he felt that there might be something wrong with Li Zixuan's words, he couldn't find anything to refute at the moment. Instead, he faintly felt that Li Zixuan's words made sense. Seeing Li Zixuan's burning gaze on him, Yan Xiaoning was silent for a moment and said in a muffled voice, That's reasonable. Then I'll go back and discuss it with my father. I'll ask him to propose marriage to Mr. Mo. Haha. That's right. Xiaoning, I'll definitely give you a big gift on your wedding day. Li Zixuan laughed heartily when he heard this. Whether it was for business or personal reasons, he was happy to see Yan Xiaoning and Mo Lingwei get together. Moreover, these two people were the bystanders. Although they were in love with each other, if others didn't speak up, they wouldn't know when they would get together. Although Mo Lingwei's personality was a little domineering, this was a case of one willing to be beaten and the other willing to be beaten. Yan Xiaoning's eyes were a little blank as he stood there in a daze. Li Zixuan patted his shoulder and walked forward with a smile. Hey, that's not right, Xiao Xian. Why do I have to be bullied? I can. Ha. Wang Er is here. Everyone, splash him. Yes. Splash him. Who asked him to be the last? No. My mother didn't let me play in the water. I waited for a long time before sneaking out. Ha. I don't care. Everyone, let's splash him together. In the evening, Li Zixuan accompanied Han Yushi for a walk in the field. As the sun was setting, the cement ditches in Lantian County were all filled with water. Seeing this scene, Li Zixuan couldn't help but think of his previous life when he was young. Every summer, The farmland in the village needed to be irrigated by water from the river. The village's canal just happened to pass by his house, and he would often play with his friends in the canal for the whole afternoon. Of course, playing with water was fun for a while, but after playing, he would definitely get beaten up when he returned home. Haha. Wife, do you think these children will be beaten when they come home drenched? Looking at the scene in front of him, Li Zixuan's lips curled into a smile, and then he said to Han Yushi, who was beside him. In his words, there was more of a gloating element. As someone who slept beside him, how could Han Yushi not hear the gloating in Li Zixuan's tone? She rolled her eyes at Li Zixuan and said, "Husband, why do I feel that you'll still be happy when these children get beaten up when they return home?" My wife is indeed smart. Li Zixuan squeezed Han Yushi's little hand and said with a smile, "Heaven has always been fair. Some people work hard when they're young, but they won't suffer in their old age. Some people only know how to eat, drink, and play when they're young, but they can only suffer in their old age. By the same logic, these naughty children are playing in the canal now. When they return, they'll naturally be punished to kneel and be beaten up." Han Yushi couldn't help but laugh when she heard that. She said, "Husband, you're full of twisted logic. How can playing in the water have anything to do with heaven's unfairness?" Li Zixuan smiled and then said seriously, "Of course, heaven is fair. It's precisely because I've been single for more than 10 years that I got such a beautiful wife." Han Yushi's cheeks were slightly red, and she couldn't help but say, "Husband, you're talking nonsense again. Let's go back quickly. Don't let mother and father wait too long." They had already moved back to the Marquis residence in the county seat of Lantian County from the Cloud Mountain Villa. They would only stay here occasionally when there was something going on in the Cloud Mountain Villa. Usually, they would stay in the county seat. Okay. Let's go back. There was water, electricity, and electric lights. Next, they would start using electric lights on a small scale in Yanhuang College. Previously, when they were doing experiments on the banks of the Ba River, 4 of the 10 light bulbs had exploded. The impedance of the 4 light bulbs was too small, and a large amount of heat had accumulated inside the light bulbs in a very short period of time. Naturally, they would explode. Li Zixuan later asked someone to record the technical parameters of the light bulbs with stable brightness. He also asked the workshop to produce a batch of light bulbs of this standard with all their efforts. In recent days, the teachers of the physics department of Yanhuang College had also begun to teach the students about the safety of electricity use from time to time. The purpose was to ensure that when electric lights were introduced to the college, the students' lives wouldn't be in danger because of improper electricity use. At the same time, on the side of the road from the Ba River to Yanhuang College, electric poles made of cement and steel were erected. After the poles were erected, they began to set up the electric wires. Speaking of electric wires, it was really a troublesome matter. Although Yunshan was less than 3 miles away from the Ba River hydropower station, in this less than 3 miles distance, the copper core in the photoelectric wires weighed more than 2,000 pounds. Because it involved long-distance transmission of electricity, it definitely couldn't use very thin copper wires. It had to be thick copper wires, more than 2,000 pounds of high-quality brass, and it was only connected to Yunshan, but it required so much brass. Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. One had to know that in this era, brass was considered a precious metal. Its main use was to make coins. Just to get more than 2,000 pounds of brass, Li Zixuan had to go through a lot of trouble. This was because there were basically no merchants in the outside world who had the ability to get such a large amount of brass. One had to know that from the Xia, Shang, Zhou, and Han dynasties, bronze had always been a symbol of the status of the emperor and the feudal lords. After the Han dynasty, with the progress and development of the social economy and trade, the currency value of copper became prominent, and the use of copper increased rapidly. China was a country poor in copper. In ancient times, it was very difficult to find copper. The production and use of copper had a great impact on society. The production of copper in the Han, Tang, and Song dynasties was an important source of government revenue. Because of this, copper in this era was regarded as a strategic resource controlled by the country. Ordinary people not only didn't use copper, but also couldn't get more than 1,000 pounds of brass. The Tang dynasty not only prohibited private copper mining, but also prohibited private merchants and craftsmen from privately making copper. However, because copper was still popular in daily life, it was profitable to make copper. The old Tang book recorded, in the south of Jianghuai, copper is everywhere. People in the marketplace pursue profit. A single coin can be used as several vessels, and the profit is 3 to 4 times. The distant people don't know the law, so they think it's normal. Therefore, the ban on copper has to be strict. Every 1,000 pounds of copper sold is 6 caddies of copper. If it's used to make miscellaneous vessels, it's more than 6,000 pounds. The profit is great, so it's easy to sell. The general idea was that the profit of destroying copper coins to make copper could be 3 to 6 times. 6 caddies of copper coins were worth 1,000, and the vessels could be sold for 6,000. The face value of the currency was not as good as the value of the raw materials, so some people specialized in the business of destroying money to make vessels. From this, it could be seen that in this era, brass was not only a rare item, but also a noble item. It was impossible for people to take out more than 1,000 pounds of brass. Even if someone could, they wouldn't use this expensive brass to make wires. Although Li Zixuan could also throw all 2,000 pounds of copper coins into the furnace to be recast, he didn't do so because he felt that it was disrespectful to the currency itself. Moreover, destroying copper coins without permission was against the law in the Tang dynasty. He didn't want to be caught by his political enemies. In the end, Li Zixuan had no other choice but to go to the palace to see Li Er and ask for the brass. This was because he remembered that when the Nation's diplomatic mission met Li Er, they had once offered tens of thousands of pounds of brass. The current Li Er definitely didn't lack copper. At first, when Li Er heard Li Zixuan's intentions, he was naturally unwilling to give it to him. However, Li Zixuan said at that time, "Your Majesty, the Tang dynasty has now fully used Tang yuan. The demand for copper coins will decrease year by year. The brass produced by the Tang dynasty every year should be used on the righteous path. You have to know that the best conductor of electricity in the world, other than silver, is copper. Using copper to make wires to conduct electricity is the wisest choice." Furthermore, this subject first went forward to offer the blueprint of the water wheel and saved the people of Guangzhou from the abyss of suffering. Your Majesty, as the holy emperor of this generation, will naturally reward you for your contributions and punish you for your mistakes. This subject doesn't ask for other rewards, only for your Majesty to reward this subject with 10,000 pounds of brass. In the end, Li Zixuan's self-praising and shameless method of asking for rewards made Li Er so angry that he laughed. Old Li angrily scolded Li Zixuan and then chased the latter out of the palace. However, not long after Li Zixuan returned to the Marquis residence, an eunuch from the palace came to the Marquis residence to announce the imperial edict. The imperial edict was to reward Li Zixuan for his contribution to the water wheel. There was no promotion or nobility, only a reward of 5,000 pounds of brass. After Old Man Li and Yi Guozhong heard this strange imperial edict, their eyes widened and they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. On the other hand, Li Zixuan felt as if he had obtained a treasure. Although Old Li didn't give him 10,000 pounds of brass and only 5,000 pounds of brass, 5,000 pounds was enough. Previously, when he asked Li Er for 10,000 pounds of brass in the palace, Li Zixuan had opened his mouth wide and left a lot of room for negotiation. Li Er being able to take out 5,000 pounds of brass in the end, Li Zixuan was already quite satisfied. With the brass, the next step was to make the wires. The outer coil of the wires needed to be wrapped with a layer of insulating material. In modern times, the insulating material on the outside of the wires was PVC. It was made from ethylene, acrylic, and other monomers that were obtained by cracking oil and then by polymerization and other chemical reactions. Although it was easy to find oil in Tang Dynasty, the technology to decompose oil wasn't fully available yet. Therefore, Li Zixuan directly used rubber as the insulating layer of the wires. He had used this method before, but in the past, the wires used for experiments didn't consume much rubber. But now, the 3 miles of wires required a huge amount of rubber. Even the rich and imposing Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel distressed. The main thing was that rubber was too difficult to obtain. If he used this rubber to make a football, the football he made would definitely be able to sell for tens of thousands of strings of cash. At this time, Li Zixuan realized that if he wanted to promote the use of electricity in Tang Dynasty, the technology was very important, but the raw materials were also very, very important. He had to be self-sufficient. If he blindly relied on imports, not only would it cause the cost to soar, but it would also allow others to easily choke him. This was something Li Zixuan was very unwilling to see. Prepare the horse. This marquis wants to go to Chang'an. Thinking about the source of rubber, Li Zixuan suddenly thought of a person. He quickly ordered the 2 brothers behind him, Lu Feng and Lu Yun. In the future, he would definitely organize the elite forces of the academy and the workshop to overcome the difficulties and extract oil. However, he had to be self-sufficient with rubber too. He had to grasp both sides. Yes, Marquis. Chapter 14-15. Chang'an City, Yanshou Square, a house with 3 entrances. Second young master, Marquis Yong, and is waiting for you in the side hall. At noon, Feng Zhidai came back from his duty in the palace. As the vice minister of the guard, he had to accompany the emperor every day, but he still had more than 2 hours of rest in the afternoon. At this moment, Feng Zhidai had just walked into the courtyard when his guard, a Mu, hurriedly came forward and greeted him. Marquis Yong'an? Feng Zhidai was startled and said, "How long has he been here? Why didn't you inform me in the palace?" Mu cupped his fist and said, "Young master, Marquis Yong'an has been here for an hour. He didn't allow me to inform you, saying that I can't delay your work in the palace." Feng Zhidai was filled with questions, but he knew that Mu wouldn't be able to answer some of them. He could only nod and said, "Okay, I got it. Quickly prepare the tea. Prepare the tea." Haha. Isn't it boring to have tea but no wine? The best tea in the world is the immortal tea. This immortal tea is a rare treasure to others, but to me, it's very common. Vice Minister Feng, why don't you get someone to bring a pot of iced tea and we can chat while drinking? How about that? As they were talking, Li Zixuan's sharp ears heard the commotion outside. He walked out of the side hall and looked at Feng Zhidai with a smile. Feng Zhidai saw Li Zixuan coming out and quickly went forward to greet him. "Greetings to Marquis. I didn't know that Marquis was here, so I didn't welcome you personally. I hope that Marquis will forgive me." Li Zixuan was the founding Marquis, and he was also the 3rd-rank junior guardian of the Crown Prince. Feng Zhidai was just a vice minister of guards, so of course he should call himself a subordinate. At this moment, Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Haha, I came uninvited. Vice Minister Feng, please don't blame me for being rude." Feng Zhidai quickly said that he didn't dare. His attitude was very respectful, and then he ordered the guard beside him, Mu, go and prepare 2 pots of iced wine and some side dishes. I want to have a few drinks with Marquis." "Yes, young master." Mu cupped his fists and left after receiving the order. Feng Zhidai extended his hand and said, "Marquis, please. My humble abode is simple and crude. I hope that Marquis won't take offense if I neglect anything." As Li Zixuan walked, he laughed meaningfully and said, "Haha, A mountain is not high, but it is famous because of immortals. As long as there is a dragon, the water will be spiritual. Whether the house was simple or not was not important. What was important was a person's character. Although this house isn't luxurious, the decorations inside are unique, showing that the owner of this house is wise and virtuous. Feng Jidai quickly said, "Marquis, you flatter me. I, Feng Jidai, am nothing but a boor. I am not as good as Marquis in terms of literature and martial arts." In front of Marquis, how can I, Feng Jidai, be worthy of the words Hui Jin Zhuyu Wei Xen? Ha ha! Humble. Feng Shaoqing is really humble. Under Feng Jidai's warm invitation, Li Zixuan entered the house. The two of them sat down. After a while, the dishes were served. It was noon. Feng Jidai thought about what Ah Mu said earlier. Li Zixuan had been waiting here for more than an hour. From Lantian County to Chang'an City, it would take at least an hour. So, he guessed that Li Zixuan must have not had lunch. So, he invited Li Zixuan to have lunch together. Li Zixuan didn't refuse. He picked up his chopsticks, raised his wine cup, and drank with Feng Jidai. For a moment, the atmosphere was quite lively. However, from the beginning to the end, Feng Jidai did not ask Li Zixuan about his intentions. He was a smart person. He knew that if Li Zixuan was willing to say it, he would definitely say it himself. If he was not willing to say it, then it would be pointless to ask. Today, drinking with Feng Shaoqing reminded me of an interesting story. I wonder if Feng Shaoqing has heard of the story of Cao Cao discussing heroes while drinking wine? After 3 rounds of wine, Li Zixuan suddenly looked at Feng Jidai with a burning gaze and asked in a serious tone, "Cao Cao discussing heroes while drinking wine?" Feng Jidai's eyes flashed. He thought for a while and shook his head. "Marquis, forgive me for my lack of knowledge. Although I have read the records of the 3 kingdoms, I have never heard of the story of Cao Cao discussing heroes while drinking wine. If Marquis is willing to explain, I will listen with all ears." This time, it was Li Zixuan's turn to be stunned. Never heard of discussing heroes while drinking wine? It shouldn't be. Brother, haven't you read history books? Oh, that's not right. Li Zixuan suddenly realized that regarding the history of the 3 kingdoms, the records of the 3 kingdoms was the official history. The romance of the 3 kingdoms was at most a story that contained the author's strong personal feelings. In the records of the 3 kingdoms, there was no such thing as discussing heroes while drinking wine. The author of the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms was from the end of the Yuan dynasty and the beginning of the Ming dynasty. At that time, he was not even born yet. It was normal for Feng Jidai not to have heard of this story. Ahem. This is just a small story that I heard on the street. Since Feng Shaoqing is in the mood today, I will tell you about it. Li Zixuan recovered from his contemplation and coughed lightly. He organized his thoughts and began to speak. After Cao Cao killed Lu Bu at the White Gate Tower, he brought Lu Guan and Zhang back to Xuchang. At that time, Liu Bei said that he was the descendant of Prince Jing of Zhongshan and the great-great-grandson of Emperor Shaojing. Emperor Xian and Liu Bei were relatives and called Liu Bei imperial uncle. At that time, Emperor Xian realized that Cao Cao was not loyal to him. Therefore, he sent an edict to Dongqingyi to get rid of Cao Cao. Dongqingyi secretly collaborated with Liu Bei and other officials to get rid of Cao Cao. Cao Cao's advisors advised Cao Cao to get rid of Liu Bei as soon as possible so that Liu Bei would not become powerful in the future. Cao Cao said, "Everything is within my control. Why should I be afraid?" In reality, he still had some concerns. Liu Bei's benevolence and righteousness were known throughout the world. On the other hand, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei were ferocious generals. Therefore, Cao Cao invited Liu Bei to a small pavilion to drink wine and chat. Green plums were placed on a plate and a bottle of wine was boiled. The two sat across from each other and drank to their heart's content. Halfway through the wine, dark clouds suddenly appeared and rain gathered. Chow Chow and Xuanda leaned against the railing and watched from afar. Chow Chow said, "So that you can know the changes of the dragon?" Xuanda said, "I don't know the details." Chow Chow said, "The dragon can be big or small. It can rise or hide. When it is big, it can rise and breathe out fog. When it is small, it can hide. When it rises, it can soar in the universe. When it hides, it can hide in the waves." In the depths of spring, the dragon took the opportunity to change. At first, Feng Jidai did not pay much attention to this story. He felt that this story was really something that Li Zixuan heard from the street. This was because there were many places in the story that did not fit the historical fact. It was as if the original narrator of this story was intentionally belittling Chow Chow. Therefore, Feng Jidai only treated this story as a joke and did not take it to heart. However, after Li Zixuan's narration, Feng Jidai's expression turned serious. This was because he vaguely felt that Li Zixuan was insinuating that Li Zixuan was using Liu Bei, who kept a low profile and pretended to be a fool. He was insinuating that his father, the chief steward of Gaozhou and Duke Gung, Feng Ong. "Feng Shaoqing, do you think Liu Bei is really afraid of thunder, or is he just pretending?" After a few cups of wine, Li Zixuan finally finished telling the story of discussing heroes while drinking wine. Then, he looked at Feng Jidai and asked meaningfully. Feng Jidai knew that he had to make his stance clear. Otherwise, he would also become the Liu Bei who pretended to be a fool and conspired to become the ruler of the world. "Marquis, Liu Bei may seem like a righteous person on the surface, but he is actually a scheming and despicable person who covets the throne. The people of the Feng family are all honest and upright and have been loyal for generations. If we were born a few hundred years earlier, the people of the Feng family would never associate themselves with Liu Bei. Previously, when I was in Lingnan, my father had admonished me more than once. He said that in today's world, the four seas were at peace, and the common people were living and working in peace. They could finally enjoy the peace of the Golden Age. As His Majesty's subjects, the people of the Feng family must be loyal and responsible to protect the peace of His Majesty and the Great Tang. There are many tribes in Lingnan, and it has always been difficult to manage them. My father is the chief steward of Gaozhou. Normally, the way he handles matters may cause some people to criticize him, but my father doesn't care. My father believes that the current emperor is wise. He believes that as long as he can protect Lingnan for His Majesty, all criticism will vanish in front of His Majesty. Clap, clap, clap. Good. Well said, Feng Jidai. I have heard that Duke Gung's loyalty is unparalleled, and that the people of the Feng family are all good men. Let's drink to these words. Li Zixuan clapped and laughed. Actually, the reason why he told the story of Chow Chow discussing heroes while drinking wine was to secretly test Feng Jidai. Although it was impossible to accurately gauge a person's character and inner thoughts through words, a person's eyes would not lie under normal circumstances. When Feng Jidai was speaking just now, Li Zixuan had focused 120% of his attention on observing Feng Jidai's eyes. When the latter was speaking, his eyes were sincere and there was no evasiveness at all. Theoretically speaking, what he said was what he really thought. Unless his acting skills had reached the level of an Oscar for Best Actor, everything he said was from the bottom of his heart. Thank you for your praise, Marquis. To be able to have a confidant like Marquis, I am also very happy. Come, come, come. I will drink to show my respect. Feng Jidai secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He raised his wine cup and toasted to Li Zixuan from afar. Then, he tilted his head back and downed the wine in the cup in one gulp. Ha! To be honest, I came to visit Feng Shaoqing today because I have a favor to ask of you. Since Feng Jidai had passed the test, and according to Li Zixuan who was far away in Lingnan, Feng Ong had always been dutiful in Lingnan and had never done anything out of line, Li Zixuan decided to tell him the purpose of his visit. It was not that he was being superfluous, but he had to be very careful when looking for a partner. If one day the partner he found did something disgraceful, even if he was not involved, he would at least be accused of not knowing the right person. In any case, he definitely did not want to mix with a future rebel. Before cooperating, he had to investigate what should be investigated. Marquis, if you have anything to say, I will do my best to help you. Feng Jidai clasped his hands and said solemnly. I don't dare to say that. I really have something to ask of you, Feng Shaoqing, or rather, I have something to ask of you, High Duke Gung. Li Zishuan put down his wine cup and said with a serious face, Feng Shaoqing must have seen a soccer ball before. This soccer ball is made from rubber produced by a small country in Nanyang. My workshop has a great need for this material. Although the small country in Nanyang is now willing to sell its domestic rubber to me, it's hard to guarantee that they won't be disloyal in the future. Furthermore, my workshop can't do without rubber, and in the future, the people of Great Tang won't be able to do without rubber. Therefore, this marquis wants to plant rubber trees in Great Tang's territory to completely reduce the consumption of rubber in the workshop. This way, my workshop won't be led by the nose by the people of other countries. Besides, Lingnan has a hot and humid climate with abundant sunshine and rain. It is the most suitable place for rubber trees to grow. Therefore, I plan to plant rubber trees in Lingnan on a large scale. I hope that Feng Shaoqing and High Duke Gung can help me. At that time, the hundreds of thousands of people in Lingnan will benefit from the rubber trees. The people will be well fed and warm, and Lingnan will be stable. Feng Jidai suddenly understood the purpose of Li Zishuan's visit today. He thought for a moment and nodded. Marquis has brought such great benefits to Lingnan. How can I not agree? However, I still need to send a pigeon to ask my father about this matter. Feng Jidai had been in Chang'an for so long. How could he not know about the popular football? How could he not know that all the footballs were made from Li Zishuan's workshop? It was because he knew how precious rubber was that Feng Jidai agreed without hesitation. This was because he knew better than anyone else that these rubber forests could bring great benefits to the people of Lingnan. Li Zishuan laughed. Ha ha. Of course. Of course. I will wait for your news. 2 days later, in the evening, as the sun set, the sky gradually turned dark. The people under the sky were about to welcome the night. However, Yanhuang College tonight was the most unique existence in the world. Push the guillotine and power the entire college. In the past few days, all the wires from Ba to Yanhuang College had been set up. Not only that, all the wires inside Yanhuang College had been set up. Today was the first time Yanhuang College had electricity and used electric lights. Under Li Zishuan's order, Mo Zhong followed the instructions and pushed the main gate of the hydropower station to power Yanhuang College. With this push, the entire area of the academy rapidly turned into a rarely seen academy in the mortal world, at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, under the illumination of the light in the various teaching buildings and rooms, the students and teachers could not help but cheer. Wow! The electric light is so bright. It feels brighter than 5 candles. Electric light. Electric light. Turns out that what was written in the physics textbook is true. There are people in this world who can make electric lights. There are people who dare to dig for electricity. Ha ha! With this light, he would be able to clearly read the words written in the book at night. That's great. These students didn't know that even if they didn't take the initiative to read, Li Zishuan would force them to do so, because the evening self-study at Yanhuang College was coming soon. Chapter 14-16. Dad, why is Yunshan Mountain so bright tonight? How many candles did they light? At the foot of Yunshan Mountain, in a small farmhouse in Liujia village, a little kid was in his own yard after dinner. He looked up and saw that the lights on Yunshan Mountain were obviously brighter than before. He couldn't help but ask his father. Little Tao, those aren't candles, those are electric lights. Marquis's new electric lights. Those things are much brighter than ordinary candles. A middle-aged man walked out of the house and patted the little boy's shoulder as he said, "Electric lights? Why are they called electric lights? Could it be a lamp made of lightning?" This oil lamp uses oil, candles use wax, and it's said that electric lights use electricity. Marquis built a hydropower station on Ba River and uses water to generate electricity to light up the electric lights. That's why they're called electric lights. Wow! Using water to generate electricity? Marquis is amazing. Yanhuang College is also amazing. Dad, how much does one electric light cost? When will our house be able to use electric lights? This electric light can only be used by a godly school like Yanhuang College. Ordinary people like us can't afford it. Little Tao, if you want to use electric lights, the easiest way is to get into Yanhuang College. You know Hu Zhen from Han Village, right? He's the same age as you, but he got into Yanhuang College last year. I believe that our family's little Tao will be able to get in too. Yes, Dad. I must get into Yanhuang College. Yunshan Mountain's location was close to the center of Lantian County. It was surrounded by plain villages. Among the villages, Yunshan Mountain stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. In addition, Li Zishuan built Yanhuang College on Yunshan Mountain last year. Yunshan's status in Lantian County rose quickly. The people would look up at Yunshan Mountain from time to time as if they were on a pilgrimage. In their eyes, Li Zishuan was the son of an immortal. Yunshan Mountain was a godly school, a holy land for learning. Therefore, the Cloud Mountain was lit up with very bright lights tonight. It immediately attracted the attention of the villagers around the Cloud Mountain. At this time, most people had just finished their dinner and had nothing to do. Therefore, the whole family moved their stools and sat in front of the door. They pointed at the bright lights on Cloud Mountain and discussed animatedly, clicking their tongues in wonder. Yamacho, all the lights in the classroom are working normally, which means that the power generated by the 3 generators is enough to supply the entire Yanhuang College. In Yanhuang College, Mo Huai stood in front of the teaching building and said to Li Zishuan with a smile, "Good. If that's the case, I can be at ease. However, we can't neglect the education of electricity safety in the academy. Let's continue for another 2 weeks. We must let the students truly understand electricity and learn how to use it correctly." Li Zishuan heaved a sigh of relief and nodded to Mo Huai. Mo Huai smiled and said, "Yamacho, don't worry. The teachers in the physics department will definitely perform their duties well. However, with the lights, can the students read in the classroom at night before going to bed?" Li Zishuan smiled and said, "Mr. Yen has already mentioned this to me. Recently, the Academic Affairs Office will set a new class schedule for all classes. In the future, after dinner, the students will have 2 more classes. They will focus on their own studies and the teacher will explain it to them. I call this evening self-study. After the evening self-study, the students can go to the dormitory to sleep. The dormitory's power outage will be postponed to midnight." Mo Huai said with a gratified expression, "That's great. Young people should be diligent and eager to learn. Yamacho has now created the conditions for the students to study hard. The students must cherish it." Li Zishuan nodded and said a few more words to Mo Huai. Then, he bid farewell and left. Today, Li Zishuan specially came over to observe the comprehensive test of the lights in the academy. At this time, it was impossible for him to go back to the county. He could only stay with his wife in Yunshan Villa for the night. What was worth mentioning was that the Yanhuang Academy had installed electric lights and connected the wires. The Yunshan side courtyard was also equipped with electric lights. After all, they wouldn't need too many wires anyway. Li Gang, Sun Simiao, and the other elderly people stared at the electric lights in their own homes for a long time tonight. They stared until their eyes were dazzled, and only then were they willing to look away. When Li Zixuan returned to the villa, the lights were on in the house. Han Yushi was sitting in the bedroom, flipping through an unknown book. Her face was full of smiles. It was obvious that she was very happy at this time. Today, she expected that Li Zixuan would definitely not return to the county after finishing the matters in the academy. So, she came with him. "Husband, you're back." Hearing the movement at the door, Han Yushi quickly raised her head and saw Li Zixuan walking in. She got up and greeted him. "And my wife is still reading?" Li Zixuan smiled and asked casually. Han Yushi helped Li Zixuan take off his coat and smiled. "And it's too early. I'm not sleepy yet. Husband, this light is really good. Usually, after we eat dinner, we can only go to bed after a short while. But with the electric light, it's different. After dinner, we can read books. The girls can also embroider under the light. After working for a while, we can rest. I feel that this day is much more fulfilling than before." Li Zixuan couldn't help but laugh. "Hey, a small light is actually so good in your mouth?" Han Yushi said with sparkling eyes. "Of course. Husband, don't you think that the nights in the past were much more boring than the days? Other than sleeping, it's still sleeping. If you sleep too much, it's easy to be listless. Now that there's light, people can also do things at night that they do during the day. Whether it's reading or needlework, it's much more meaningful than lying in bed and not being able to sleep." Li Zixuan smiled and scratched Han Yushi's white and tender nose. "Wife, you're right. However, other than reading and needlework, there's something more meaningful waiting for us to do tonight. Wife, do you want to know what it is?" Looking at the naughty smile on Li Zixuan's lips, Han Yushi quickly reacted. Her tender face blushed and she hurriedly said, "I don't know and I don't want to know. Husband, quickly wash up and sleep." If we're going to sleep, of course, we'll wash up together and sleep together." No. Electricity and light were used on Yunshan Mountain. Even at night, it was as bright as day. This news seemed to have grown wings. By the next day, it had spread throughout the entire Chang'an, as well as more than 20 provinces and counties near Chang'an City. The people were discussing it in private. After all, the appearance of the light was too unbelievable. Everyone was doubting whether the rumors were true or false. But soon the official announcement came. It was today's Datang Daily. The headline was about the news of Yanhuang College's official electrification last night. The title was, "An Epoch-Making Event. That Man Brought Light to the World's Dark Night." The writer was the famous Datang Daily gold medal reporter, Li Yu. After reading the newspaper in black and white about everything that happened in Yanhuang College last night and the introduction of the light's principle, people finally believed that Yanhuang College had mastered the method of generating and using electricity. They also believed that there really was a light that was several times brighter than candles and oil lamps. It was human nature to seek the light and avoid the dark. No one liked the dark. Therefore, thousands of people couldn't help but yearn for the light that was mentioned in the newspaper. Some wealthy businessmen who thought that they were wealthy began to send people to Chitsu Pavilion to inquire if they could buy the light that was mentioned in the newspaper. But without exception, they all received the same answer. That was that it was easy to buy light, but it was difficult to find electricity. Currently, in the entire Tang Empire, only the Ba hydropower station in Lantian County could generate electricity. If they wanted to use the light, it wasn't just about buying a few light bulbs. They also had to ask the Marquis of Yong to provide electricity to their homes. As a result, those wealthy people who were eager to try and use the light in their homes all retreated. It was true that their families were rich, but in front of Li Zixuan, they could only be considered poor. Lord Marquis, ever since the Department of Commerce was established, it has tried 23 cases of merchant disputes. This lowly official has personally taken part in every case, and every case was only decided after multiple sources of evidence and conclusive evidence. This lowly official is willing to guarantee that not a single one of these cases was unjust or misjudged. Moreover, all the officials of the Department of Commerce have treated these merchant disputes the same as ordinary civil cases. In the Lantian County Yamen, County Magistrate he was reporting to Li Zishuan with a serious face. After Li Zishuan woke up this morning, he had a simple breakfast and brought his wife back to the Marquis residence in the county. Thinking of the vigorous business tax reform and the crackdown on evil campaign that had been carried out in Lantian County a few days ago, Li Zishuan didn't even warm his seat after returning to the Marquis residence before rushing to the Lantian County Yamen to find County Magistrate he to understand the situation. And this is the correct way for the government to treat the businessmen. Li Zishuan nodded his head and praised. We have collected heavy taxes from the businessmen, so we have to provide them with protection. To put it bluntly, the government is no different from those local bullies who ask for protection fees from the businessmen. The local bullies have collected protection fees from the businessmen and have fulfilled their duty to protect them. If our government can't do as well as the local bullies, then it will be difficult to collect the business tax of Lantian County again. County Magistrate he nodded his head solemnly. This official will remember Marquis teachings today, and will do my best to make the Department of Commerce better. And go ahead and do it. If you encounter any obstacles, just let me know. I will clear the obstacles for you, Li Zishuan said with a serious face. Thank you, Marquis, for your support. County Magistrate he quickly cupped his hands and thanked him. After a pause, he said, Marquis, there were indeed many people who opposed the new business decree issued by the Department of Commerce at the beginning. But after the gangs formed by the local ruffians in Lantian County were all wiped out, the direction of public opinion immediately developed in our favor. The merchants in the city began to actively file their taxes. Even the merchants outside the city rushed to Lantian County to buy shops in order to enjoy the preferential policies that our Department of Commerce provided for the merchants in Lantian County. According to this official's knowledge, the reason why these businessmen suddenly came to Lantian County to open shops was to obtain the same status as the farmers and craftsmen. Businessmen have always been a class that has been despised. Now that Marquis has decreed that businessmen, farmers, and craftsmen have the same status, from now on, Lantian County will only be divided into scholars and commoners. When those businessmen who were bullied in other places heard this news, how could they hold back? As for the second reason, those merchants who wanted to set up shop in Lantian County mainly wanted to send their children to the county school in Lantian County. After all, in other counties, this kind of treatment was something that couldn't be bought with money. Among these businessmen, the most prominent one was Chang, an city's #1 cloth merchant, and also a member of Marquis Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce, Chao Wendong. On the day the Department of Commerce was established, he brought his family to Lantian County. He said that he would be settling down in Lantian County in the future. He even bought a house in advance. Under Chao Wendong's leadership, the businessmen from other states and counties followed suit. The prices of shops in Lantian County rose again and again. In a short period of time, it was hard to find a shop. County Magistrate He's words were filled with excitement. He had reason to be excited. The small Lantian County had now become a bustling county, second only to Chang'an City. There were many shops, and there was an endless flow of businessmen. Although Li Zishuan was the one who came up with the specific strategies and policies, and he was just a tool man, he was happy to have such achievements even if he was just a tool man. I know all of this. After the new tax law is implemented, how much business tax do you think the county office will be able to collect in the first month? Li Zishuan smiled and asked again. Hearing Li Zishuan ask this, County Magistrate he smiled even more happily. He cupped his hands towards Li Zixuan and said, Marquis, from the monthly profit figures reported to the county office by the major shops in the city, the county office will be able to collect more than 4,000 strings of coins in this month. It's even more than the previous year's business tax revenue. 4,000 strings of coins. That's still okay. Li Zixuan frowned and muttered softly. This soft muttering was heard by County Magistrate He, and he could not help but want to vomit blood. He thought to himself, you're still not satisfied with 4,000 strings of coins in business tax every month? You might as well just lead your troops to the major shops in the city square and rob them. As if he saw through County Magistrate He's thoughts, Li Zixuan said lightly, You don't have to think that I'm magnanimous, but the business tax revenue of Lantian County must exceed the agricultural tax as soon as possible. Only when the business tax is much higher than the agricultural tax, then we will have the capital to reduce the agricultural tax for the farmers, so that all the citizens of Lantian County can eat their fill and wear warm clothes. Hearing this, County Magistrate He's heart was in turmoil. He did not expect Li Zixuan to raise the business tax to reduce the agricultural tax. At the same time, he could not help but respect Li Zixuan, thinking that Marquis was the one who truly thought for the citizens. Marquis treats the citizens with benevolence, this official admires you. After a moment of silence, County Magistrate He cupped his hands towards Li Zixuan and said with a face full of admiration, As an official, I naturally have to help the citizens. This is what this Marquis should do, and it is also what you should do. Li Zixuan said lightly, This official understands. County Magistrate He cupped his hands, and then he suddenly remembered something, so he quickly asked, Marquis, this official heard that Yanwang College used electric lights last night, which can make the night as bright as day. I wonder if this electric light can be promoted to the county? Li Zixuan was a little speechless. After a moment of silence, he said faintly, Do you have a mine at home? The kind that can produce copper. Chapter 14-17. Marquis, what do you mean? In the Lantian County office, County Magistrate He heard Li Zixuan's strange words and asked in confusion. Li Zixuan explained helplessly, The transmission of electricity requires wires. Have you seen the cement pillars at the foot of Yunshan Mountain? That is the electric pole that carries the wires. The wires connecting the two electric poles are made of copper. Just the distance between the hydropower station and Yanwang College already consumes more than 2,000 caddies of copper. If the electricity is connected to Lantian County, how much copper do you think it will consume? Who can afford it? County Magistrate He was shocked when he heard this. He exclaimed, Just the Yanwang Academy alone cost more than 2,000 caddies of brass? If Lantian County is connected to electricity, won't it consume more than 10,000 caddies of copper? In the entire Tang Empire, I'm afraid only His Majesty can take out so much copper, right? Li Zixuan said in annoyance, Otherwise? Do you think it's easy to connect a place to electricity? The 2,000 caddies of copper required this time was exchanged with His Majesty by this Marquis merit for the drought. This official is ignorant. I hope Marquis can forgive me. County Magistrate He clasped his hands in embarrassment and said tentatively, Marquis, His Majesty has bestowed Lantian County to you. Logically speaking, all the mineral veins in Lantian County should belong to you. You can send people to search for mineral veins in Lantian County. Perhaps you can really find a copper mine. Li Zixuan frowned and said, You have been an official in Lantian County for many years. Have you ever heard of a copper mine here? County Magistrate He said hesitantly, This official has never heard of it. But this official heard that Marquis is good at searching for dragons. So you want this Marquis to send people to search for mineral veins in Lantian County? Li Zixuan rolled his eyes and said, This official doesn't dare. This official doesn't dare. County Magistrate He hurriedly cupped his hands and said, I'm just hoping for a fluke. What if Lantian County has a copper mine? That way, our Lantian County can be connected to electricity. Marquis, didn't you say before that you wanted to turn Lantian County into a commercial city? If we can get electricity and use electric lights, then the night in Lantian County will be as bright as day, and we can open a night market. Night market? Li Zishuan's eyes lit up, and he was suddenly interested. He looked at County Magistrate He and said with a faint smile, "You have a lot of ideas." "That's right, this Marquis is indeed planning to open a night market after Lantian County is electrified, so as to further stimulate Lantian County's commercial potential. However, this Marquis has already studied the terrain of Lantian County, and there are no copper mines here. Therefore, it is basically impossible for County Magistrate He to rely on the copper mines of Lantian County to be self-sufficient and set up electricity lines. Furthermore, His Majesty had previously promised this Marquis 3 ore veins. Shu Lan's vanadium titanium magnetite mine is one of them. Logically speaking, this Marquis can also request for another copper mine from His Majesty." Hearing this, County Magistrate He's eyes lit up. Just as he was about to say something, Li Zishuan's heart was as clear as a mirror as he interrupted. "Don't have any wishful thinking. My Tang Empire is already lacking in copper. If this Marquis were to ask for more copper mines, it will definitely make things difficult for His Majesty. So even if His Majesty had promised me 3 ore veins, I will not ask His Majesty for more copper mines. As for the copper needed to connect the electricity lines, this Marquis will think of another way." Marquis is right. This official was too anxious. County Magistrate He hurriedly cupped his hands and said submissively. Li Zishuan nodded his head and said, "He. No matter what, your original intentions are good. Right, remember that at the beginning of every month, order the Department of Commerce to check the accounts of the various shops. If anyone is found to be evading taxes, punish them severely according to the rules. Also, the officials of the Department of Commerce must ensure that they are honest and clean. This Marquis will set up an additional monitoring team. If anyone is found to be accepting bribes from merchants or helping merchants to evade taxes, they will be punished severely. Where there were benefits, there would be corruption. The Department of Commerce was in charge of Lantian County's commerce. Usually, the benefits it handled were huge. It was hard to guarantee that there would not be a few officials who would be tempted by wealth and lose their principles. On this point, Li Zishuan had to be careful. When County Magistrate He heard this, his heart trembled. He cupped his hands and said, "This official obeys. This official will keep a close eye on the Department of Commerce and prevent any corruption from occurring." That's good. Li Zishuan nodded his head and left. Regarding the electric lamp, it was not only County Magistrate He who wanted it. Li Zishuan also wanted it. Even Li Zishuan's father and mother wanted it. After lunch, Father Li, Mrs. Li, Yi Guochong, and old Madame Yi wanted to go to Yunshan Villa to stay for 2 days to experience the magical electric lamp. This was because in the morning, Han Yushi had told them a lot about the advantages and magical aspects of the electric lamp in front of them. It made them very curious, and they all wanted to see and experience it for themselves. Li Zishuan thought that there were still some things to do at Yanwang College, so he brought Han Yushi and a few elders with him. The group of people and 3 carriages quickly left the county and arrived at the foot of Yunshan Villa. After Li Zishuan sent his family to Yunshan Villa, he went to Yanwang College by himself and met Li Tai, Qing Chumo, and the others. "Yamacho, the electric lamp last night was really bright. You have brought a magical item to the college. I just don't know when Chang'an City will be like Yanwang Academy, where there will be electricity and electric lights?" The little fatty, Li Tai, said excitedly when he saw Li Zishuan. At this time, he was really glad that he had chosen to follow Li Zishuan to Yanwang College to study. Although Yanhuang College was located in the remote Yunshan Villa, after nearly a year of renovation, this place was even more advanced than Chang'an City. It was even more fascinating. Moreover, Yanhuang College's knowledge was unique in this world. Some things in Yanhuang College were also unique in this world. This place was like a celestial palace above the mortal world, full of magic. Everything that seemed impossible had a chance to become possible here. Li Zixuan glanced at the little fatty and said, Chang'an City has 108 markets, and millions of people live in them. If we want to connect them with electricity and let everyone use electric lamps, let's not talk about whether we have that many copper wires. Even if we do, Qingke, use your knowledge of electricity and do some calculations. Can one Ba hydropower station provide electricity for millions of people? The current Li Tai was no longer the pedantic scholar from before who only knew how to say yes. When he heard this, he quickly reacted and said with an embarrassed expression, Ahem. Yamacho is right. But if one hydropower station is not enough, then we can just build a few more, can't we? The electric lamp is so useful. The officials in the imperial court will definitely support my father's construction of the hydropower station. Li Zixuan said unhappily, Do you think building a hydropower station is as easy as eating a meal? Doesn't it cost money? Many people in the Tang Empire still have problems eating. The officials will not allow His Majesty to do such a wasteful and costly thing. Li Tai also knew that Li Zixuan was telling the truth, so he could only nod awkwardly. Qing Chumo said at this time, Xiao Xian, Yamacho, I heard that the academy is going to change the class schedule and add 2 classes every night? Is it true? Yes. Yamacho, is it true? Sun Zifan also quickly asked. Li Zixuan crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, Of course it's true. Now that the academy has electric lamps, the night is as bright as day. If we don't make use of such a good condition, wouldn't it be a waste of God's gift? Qing Chumo widened his eyes and said bitterly, Ah, damn. Yamacho, you want the academy to use electric lamps just to add 2 classes for us. Isn't this too much? If we knew this was the case, we wouldn't have wanted you to install electric lamps in the academy. Li Zixuan said unhappily, That's because you don't want to, it doesn't mean that others, Yamacho, Duke Lu, Duke Yi, and the other dukes are here. At this time, Mo Zhong came over and cupped his fist. Before Li Zixuan could say anything, Qing Chumo trembled and quickly said, Cough. Yamacho, I still have something to do, so I'll go back to the dormitory first. Then, without waiting for Li Zixuan to say anything, he ran away as fast as he could. The main thing was that Qing Chumo often warned him, so Qing Chumo was worried that he would be punished by his father in front of so many people and lose face. Li Tai, Sun Zifan, and the others were not used to appearing in front of these old generals, mainly because they did not like to be restrained, so they also left behind Qing Chumo. Li Zixuan shook his head helplessly, then turned around and went to greet Qing Chumo, Qin Xiong, and the others. Uncles, why are you so free today to come to Cloud Mountain personally? After Li Zixuan welcomed them into the academy and greeted them, Li Zixuan asked, Haha. Today, the few of us old fellows came here especially to thank you, little Xian. Qing Chumo laughed and said in a rough voice, Xiao Xian, the water wheel you gave us earlier is a great help to us. Our villages together have a population of more than 10,000 people and tens of thousands of acres of fertile land. If it weren't for your water wheel, the villages might have had no harvest this summer. It's a small matter if we don't receive rent, but if the villagers don't have food to eat, that's a big matter. As Li Zixuan had always been close to the Qing, Qin, Niu, Yuqi, and Li Jing families, when the workshop produced the water wheel, it was sent to them immediately. This was not something that others would be jealous of, because before the water wheel was produced, Qing Chumo, Qin Xiong, and the others had already pre-ordered it with Li Zixuan, so it was reasonable for him to supply it to them first. Li Zishuan heard and asked, Uncle Ching, has the canal in your village been repaired and the water is flowing? Ching Chumo nodded and said, It's repaired. The water is flowing. This is all thanks to you, Xiao Xian, for giving us the water wheel first. You don't know, but when old Fox Zhongsun saw that we got the water wheel, he was so anxious that he pulled out many strands of his beard. Li Zishuan didn't respond to the latter part of the sentence. Instead, he smiled slightly and said, Uncle Cheng is too polite. This is only a small matter. With the relationship between our families, why do you need to personally come over to thank me? Before Ching Chumo could say anything, Qin Xiong interrupted, Xiao Xian, don't believe him. Jijia coming to thank you today is fake. He wants to see the light bulb, to see you, the immortal child who brings light to the world's dark night. Ha! For Qin Xiong to be able to say this, it was obvious that he had seen today's Datong Daily, because the headline was the article written by Li Yu, epic making, That Man Brings Light to the World's Dark Night. Hey! Second brother Qin, in front of the younger generation, can't you be more tactful with your words? As an elder, I, old Cheng, feel a little embarrassed, Ching Chumo said at this time. Everyone could not help but be speechless, thinking in their hearts, how do you look like you're embarrassed? How shameless! Humph! Madman Ching, you're really thick-skinned. Even I find it embarrassing to walk with you. Yuchi Jingda did not give old Ching any face at all and attacked verbally. Ching Chumo sneered and said indifferently, Embarrassing? If you find it embarrassing, then go away. Why do you want to come to the academy with me? Seeing that these two old enemies were about to fight, Li Zishuan hurriedly said, Since you all want to see the light bulb, why don't you stay in the courtyard for a night? You can still make it in time for morning court tomorrow when you wake up. The second phase of the Cloud Mountain Courtyard project had long ended, and even the third phase was nearing its end. Now, there were many modern-style courtyards in Cloud Mountain, and Li Zishuan had already given each of these old generals a courtyard. The Qing family's courtyard had always been lived in by Qing Chumo. Even if a few courtyards were given away, there were still many left, completely enough for the academy's professors in the future. Ha! That's exactly what I'm thinking. Qing Chumo laughed and said, It's rare for us to come to Cloud Mountain. Since we're here, we have to pay Dr. Sun a visit. Back then, Divine Dr. Sun had also put in a lot of effort to heal second brother Qin's old injuries. We have to pay him a visit. Qin Xiong nodded and stroked his beard. That's how it should be. Li Zishuan did not stop them, and the group left the academy and headed towards Sun Simiao's courtyard. The next day, Li Zishuan woke up groggily from his dream, feeling like his brain was about to split open. After seeing the bright lights last night, Qing Chumo was very excited and insisted on pulling all the natives of Cloud Mountain together to hold a light party. During the meal, Li Zishuan was not good at persuading people to drink, so he was forced to drink a lot by Qing Chumo and the others. When he drank, he naturally did not use his inner force to dissolve the alcohol, so he really woke up with a hangover this morning. This feeling made Li Zishuan feel like his brain was about to split open. Marquis. The first batch of vanadium titanium magnetite ore from Shu has been shipped back. Without eating breakfast, he only used the cold water from the well to wash his face. After a while, Lu Feng hurriedly ran over and cupped his fists towards Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan was stunned and then said excitedly, What? The vanadium ore is here? That's great. Let's go. Follow me to the workshop. Chapter 14:18. Young master, why are you here? Faubert saw Li Zishuan in the workshop of the strange interest pavilion and quickly greeted him. Li Zishuan stopped in his tracks, but his eyes swept across the courtyard. As he looked, he replied, Faubert, I heard that the vanadium ore from Sichuan has been transported back, so I came to take a look. Where is it? How much is there in total? Faubert said with a smile. Young master, the ore has been transported to the steel mill. I know that you value this kind of ore, so I didn't dare to leave it outside. Li Zishuan smiled, and was about to speak when another person came into the workshop. The vanadium ore is here. Where is it? Hey! Yamacho, you're here too? It was Wang Ji. Vanadium was a catalyst necessary for mass production of concentrated sulfuric acid. Not only was Li Zishuan concerned, but Wang Ji had also been waiting for the vanadium ore from Sichuan to be transported back. Li Zishuan nodded with a smile and said, Yes, Mr. Wang, you're quite fast, aren't you? Wang Ji said happily, Hey! As the leader of the chemistry department, of course I have the responsibility to help the academy develop new chemical raw materials. I've been looking forward to this vanadium ore for a long time. Young master, the guards transporting the ore this time are all Chong people from Sichuan. They also brought 2 letters, saying that their young master Ku gave them to you. Uncle Fu said, as he took out 2 lacquered letters from his bosom and handed them to Li Zishuan. Young Master Ku? Hearing this name, Li Zishuan was a little confused. After a moment, he came back to his senses and couldn't help but laugh. It should be Ku Shirqing, right? Oh, it seems that this young man is doing well in the Chong tribe. He's even called Young Master. Wang Ji stroked his beard and smiled proudly. The students of our Yanwang College will always be the center of attention, no matter where they go. This old man has some impression of Ku Shirqing. He is indeed a diligent and studious child. The old man's current appearance was exactly the same as those old teachers in modern times when they found out that their students had made a name for themselves. They were obviously very pleased with themselves, but their mouths and faces were still rather reserved and self-restrained. Seeing this, Li Zishuan couldn't help but want to laugh. Ha ha! Let's go. Mr. Wang, why don't we take a look at the quality of this batch of vanadium ores? Li Zishuan saw that Faubert was secretly curling his lips at the arrogant Wang Ji, so he quickly pulled Wang Ji towards the steel mill. Whoa! With so many ores, you should be able to extract a lot of vanadium, right? Walking into the yard of the steel mill, they saw a large pile of light gray ores of various sizes under a cloth shed. At a glance, there were at least 500 kilograms. Wang Ji's eyes widened and he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Li Zishuan walked closer and casually picked up a piece of ore from the pile. He brought it closer to him and looked at it seriously for a moment. The quality is very good. Mr. Wang, this pile of vanadium titanomagnetite can produce at least 300 kilograms of vanadium. With so much vanadium, it should be enough to cover the recent consumption of sulfuric acid in the workshop. You'll have to work a little harder these days. Get the craftsmen in the workshop to modify the boiler and build a small vanadium workshop. Then build a workshop for sulfuric acid production. Quickly produce a batch of concentrated sulfuric acid. I have great use for it. Wang Ji replied excitedly, Yes, Yamacho. Even if Li Zishuan didn't say it, he would have taken the initiative to volunteer. After all, it wasn't easy to get so many vanadium titanomagnetite ores. If he couldn't refine it himself, he would grow hairs on his back. Oh, that's right. Yamacho, according to the textbook chemistry, sulfuric acid is highly corrosive. It can react with iron to form ferrous sulfate and hydrogen. So, what will we use to store concentrated sulfuric acid in the future? Wang Ji paused for a moment and suddenly said. Li Zishuan thought for a moment and replied with a smile, Mr. Wang, dilute sulfuric acid can dissolve iron and release hydrogen. The reaction mechanism is that the hydrogen ions in the dilute sulfuric acid reacts with iron. But when concentrated sulfuric acid comes into contact with iron, it will not or very rarely react with iron. Because concentrated sulfuric acid has a very high purity, sulfuric acid exists in the form of covalent compounds, not ionic compounds. When its purity is high, it will ionize very little hydrogen ions, almost none. So, it won't corrode ironware. Instead, it will passivate the iron and form a dense oxide film on the surface of the iron. This oxide film is very dense and prevents concentrated sulfuric acid from entering the iron to continue the reaction. However, although concentrated sulfuric acid can be stored in carbon steel, it is best to store it at room temperature and pressure. This way, the corrosion rate of carbon steel will be the lowest. This is because the hot concentrated sulfuric acid will also react with iron. In order to ensure the safety of concentrated sulfuric acid storage, we need to use horizontal storage tanks and build leak-proof walls around the tank. The sulfuric acid storage room must prohibit fireworks because there will be a small amount of dilute acid on the surface of concentrated sulfuric acid that will react with iron to produce hydrogen. When the hydrogen comes into contact with fire, it will explode. In terms of safety, Mr. Wang, you must be very careful. Safety in production is more important than Mount Tai. I don't want any safety accidents to happen in our workshop. At the end of his speech, Li Zishuan's face was very dignified. Even in modern times, chemical factories were the places where safety accidents were most likely to occur. Either the leakage of toxic chemical products or the explosion caused by flammable substances, no matter which one it was, it would cause great harm to the surrounding people. It was precisely because of this that Li Zishuan had repeatedly warned Wang Ji in such a serious manner. Wang Ji also understood the pros and cons of this matter, so he cupped his hands together. "Don't worry, Mountain Elder. This old man will definitely put safety first and conduct safety training for the craftsmen on a regular basis. At the same time, I will also link their monthly salary to the safety of production. This way, everyone will strictly abide by the safety regulations." Li Zishuan's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "Okay, Mr. Wang, this is a good idea. When you go back, discuss with Faubert on how to implement this salary system as soon as possible. Those craftsmen who follow the regulations will be paid more. Those who violate the safety regulations will have their salary deducted. We must make all the craftsmen in the workshop pay attention to this." "Yamacho, no problem. This old man knows the importance of this matter." Wang Ji nodded and replied. After telling Wang Ji to pay attention to safety, Li Zishuan asked Wang Ji to produce a batch of concentrated sulfuric acid as soon as possible because he was going to make a battery. In addition, the catalyst used in sulfuric acid production, vanadium, could also be used as a catalyst for cracking oil in the future. It could be said that this was killing two birds with one stone. After leaving the workshop and returning to the courtyard, Li Zishuan took out the letters that Faubert gave him. On one of the envelopes, it was written Yamacho only and the other Mother only. Li Zishuan opened the letter that Shurqing wrote to him and began to read it carefully. "It has been almost a month since I left Yunshan. Shurqing misses the people and things in the academy, but Shurqing is even more grateful to Yamacho for giving me this opportunity to benefit the people in my hometown. Now, the road from Guangzhong to Shu is being built. The imperial court has also sent a large number of officials with large amounts of money to support the construction of the people in Shu. A group of merchants from Chang'an City also set up shop in Chengdu Prefecture. They brought many new things that the local people had never seen before. The commerce in the center of Sichuan was thriving. The mining of vanadium titanium magnetite allowed the local people to work in the mines to earn money. In less than half a month, the wages that each miner received were almost equivalent to 3 to 4 months of their previous income. According to Yamacho's instructions, Shurqing adheres to the principle of safety first. I would rather mine the vanadium or slowly to ensure the safety of the miners. So far, there has not been a single casualty. Oh right, Tang Daily has also opened an office in Shu. Now, the people in Shu are starting to get used to reading the newspaper every morning. Yesterday, I read in the newspaper that Yamacho has invented a new type of water wheel and released the blueprint to the world. Shurqing is proud to be a student of Yamacho. In addition, His Highness the King of Shu ordered people to set up a branch of Yanhuang Bank in Shu. With the help of senior official Gao, the people and merchants in Shu have slowly begun to accept the new currency, Tang Yuan, and the people who use copper coins are gradually decreasing. With the help of the Sanbao brothers, I brought the curved plow, Tang Dynasty dictionary, bicycles, coal stoves, honeycomb briquettes, and other things that are beneficial to the people to Shu. With the support of senior official Gao, I opened the people's wisdom, promoted agriculture, and promoted business. Now Shu is undergoing earth-shaking changes. How lucky I am to be able to witness the prosperity of my hometown, and the people's lives are getting better. I remember Yamacho once said, "The knowledge on paper is shallow, but the knowledge must be experienced." In the process of leading the people in my hometown to become rich, I understand the true meaning of this sentence. Some things seem simple, but when you really do it, you will often encounter many unexpected difficulties. Fortunately, I have survived those difficulties. Now, I have become the young Master Ku in the hearts of the people in Shu province. Yamacho, rest assured, I will not be arrogant in victory and will not be discouraged in defeat. I will lead the people in Shu province to become rich. I will not lose face for Yamacho and will not smear the reputation of Yanhuang College. I, Ku Shurqing, wish Yamacho success in everything and good health. Husband, what are you looking at? Why are you so happy? Li Zishuan had just finished reading the letter, and was about to sigh when Han Yushi walked over and asked softly with a smile. Ha! Nothing. It's a letter written by a student of the academy. Li Zishuan said with a smile as he pulled his wife to his side. A letter from a student? Aren't all of your students in the academy? Why do they need to write to you? Han Yushi frowned her beautiful willowy eyebrows and asked doubtfully. Li Zishuan smiled and asked, "Wife, do you still remember the student named Ku Shurqing who volunteered to go to Shu province?" Han Yushi frowned and thought for a moment, then said with a smile, "Oh, I remember now. His mother came to Cloud Mountain to deliver a letter to you. And it's him. This child is now doing well in Shu province. As a teacher, I am very gratified to see it." Li Zishuan handed the letter to Han Yushi and smiled. "I see. I was wondering why my husband was smiling so happily." Han Yushi took the letter, swept it aside, and said happily, "My husband is benefiting the people of Lantian County, but Ku Shurqing is benefiting the people of his hometown. This student is very similar to you, my husband. The Yanhuang Academy has produced many talent. In the future, if the students of the academy can be like Ku Shurqing and use their own knowledge to bring prosperity to the world, then my husband will truly have students all over the world and your name will go down in history." Li Zishuan couldn't help but feel excited when he heard this. He patted his wife's shoulder and sighed. "That's why Yanhuang College is the greatest wealth and support of the Tang Empire and our family. Instead of studying the art of intrigue and mingling in the imperial court, it's better to open the school and teach thousands of students what I have learned. In the future, I will have students all over the world. Even if you are the Prime Minister or the Emperor, you will have to respect me." These were the words from the bottom of his heart. When Li Zishuan first established the Yanhuang Academy and spread the knowledge of engineering, it was to benefit the people of the world and to seek a little bit of welfare for the toiling masses of this era. However, at the same time, Li Zishuan established the Yanhuang Academy to seek support for himself, a support that would allow him to establish a foothold in this feudal era of the emperors, establish his family, and establish his life so that others would not easily touch him. Only when the students of Yanhuang College became more and more promising, and when there were more and more promising students in the academy, would his support become more and more reliable. The reason why Confucius shone in the world and his name went down in history was not only because of his own greatness, but also because he had 3,000 students who spread his teachings and sent him to the altar in one fell swoop. Li Zishuan knew that he couldn't be a saint like Confucius. He only wanted to seek a solid support in this feudal era. That was all. My husband, you have worked hard for this family. Han Yushi caressed Li Zishuan's forehead with some heartache, then leaned on his shoulder and said softly, I don't have to suffer. In this life, I have a wife who understands me and parents who love and protect me so much. I don't have to suffer. Li Zishuan caressed Han Yushi's long hair and comforted her softly. After a while, he said, Oh. Shurqing also wrote a letter to his mother. I have to get someone to send the letter to Chang'an. My wife, you should also pack up. We will return to Lantian County in a while. Oh, right, my husband, it seems like we can't go back today. Han Yushi nodded first, then shook her head and said. Li Zishuan was suddenly puzzled and asked, Why is that? Does my wife have something to do in Yunshan? Han Yushi saw that Li Zishuan really couldn't remember what it was and could only helplessly say, My husband, have you forgotten? Tomorrow is Pang Feiji's wedding. Pang Feiji has followed my husband all the way and has risked his life several times. Even if he didn't make any contributions, he has worked hard. Tomorrow is his wedding. Shouldn't my husband make a trip there? Li Zishuan opened his mouth and suddenly understood. Lu Feng had mentioned this to him before, but he had too many things to do on a daily basis and accidentally forgot about it. At this time, he smiled a little embarrassedly and said, Yes. Look at my memory, I almost forgot about this. Thank you for reminding me. Then let's not go back to the county tonight. Let's go to the wedding banquet tomorrow. Han Yushi smiled sweetly and nodded in agreement. Chapter 14-19. Hey! Brother G's second uncle, you're here. Come in and have a seat. You are? Oh, you're Brother G's eldest uncle, right? Brother G told me about you. Please come in. Brother G's eldest uncle, please come in and have a seat. The next day, it was close to noon. In front of the Han family village's new residence, red silk was fluttering in the wind. Pang Feiji's two underlings, Xiongde and Xiong-er, were serving as hosts at the entrance of the courtyard, greeting the guests. These two brothers were twins. Today they were wearing brand new clothes, which made them look especially festive. It was fitting for the occasion. Yo, brothers Liu, you're here so early too? At this time, two people came over. Xiongda's eyes lit up and he quickly went forward to greet them warmly. They were Li Zishuan's current bodyguards, Lu Feng and Lu Yun. Lu Feng smiled and said, Brother Pang's wedding, of course we have to come early. We also want to see if there's anything we can help with. Oh right, where's Brother Pang? Xiongde laughed and replied, Boss is changing his clothes now and preparing to marry the bride. The former Japanese Princess Shimu is now the adopted daughter of the Plum Village's second Master Lu. She has changed her name to Lu Shimu. We can tell outsiders that she was an orphan when she was young and was later adopted by second Master Lu. This way we can avoid unnecessary trouble. Lu Feng nodded and said, I've heard Marquis mention this before. Don't worry, our people won't let it slip. He knew that this was a new identity that Li Zishuan had helped Pang Feiji's relatives and friends to avoid suspicion. Oh right. Brother Lu, when will Marquis and Madame Marquis arrive? Xiongde asked. They should be here soon. Marquis asked us to come first. He said he'll come later. Xiongde and Xiong-er, you guys go ahead. We'll go in and see if there's anything we can help with. Lu Feng replied and walked into the courtyard. Feiji is doing well now. He's following the Marquis of Yong, and to do great things and even married a beautiful wife. Second sister you finally don't have to worry about Feiji anymore. Pang family, main hall. A few of Pang Feiji's close friends and relatives were sitting beside Pang Feiji's mother, Madame Yu, and chatting about daily life. Haha. Not Gay his aunt. For him to be able to get to where he is today, it's all because of Marquis's nurturing. Otherwise, based on his previous sloppy attitude in Wu-Ho government, when would he be able to find a wife? Madame Yu's face was rosy and beaming with joy. It was obvious that she was very happy. Ha! I heard that Fei Ke's wife is really pretty. We'll have to open our eyes later. That's right. Fei is considered the most promising child in the Pang family. His wife must be extraordinarily beautiful. As relatives, we have never seen her before. Wait a moment. We have to take a good look. Inside the house, Pang Feiji's 7 and 8 aunts were all talking noisily. Madame Yu pursed her lips and smiled. I don't care if she's pretty or not, as long as she's virtuous and Fei Ke likes her. Second sister Yu is right. When marrying a wife, you can't just look at her looks. What's important is that she's virtuous. Yes. Speaking of which, Chen should be here soon. Where's Feiji? We're all waiting to welcome the bride together. He's here. Second uncle, second aunt, eldest uncle, you're all here? As they were talking, Pang Feiji walked out of the room in his wedding attire with a bright red flower pinned on his chest. Yo, eldest nephew, you look so spirited in this wedding attire. That's right. Feiji used to look like a burly man, but after dressing up today, he looks quite handsome. That lady has good taste. Pang Feiji felt a little embarrassed after hearing everyone's praises. He scratched his head and smiled. That's enough, uncle, second aunt, stop talking. If you continue, people will say that you're selling melons and praising yourselves. Hey, look at you, child. How can you say that about your relatives? That's right. If we're old ladies, then Feij, aren't you a watermelon? Everyone burst into laughter when they heard that. Eldest brother, the auspicious hour is here. We should go to Plum Village to welcome the bride. At this moment, Big Xiong walked in and said to Pang Feiji. That's right. Feij, go and welcome the bride. Don't miss the auspicious hour. Madame Yu also stood up and said, Yes, mother. Pang Feiji nodded. Then, he rode on a tall horse and led the wedding procession to Plum Village. At 4 in the afternoon, the wedding procession brought the bride back to the Han family manor. Just as they were about to perform the ceremony, a shout came from outside the door. The Marquis of Yong'an has arrived. 20 pieces of jade, 10 pearls, a pair of elephant tusks, a great celestial mirror, and $100,000. It was Big Xiong's voice. After hearing that, everyone in the house was shocked. Firstly, they were shocked that Li Zixuan, the Marquis of Tang Kingdom, would come personally to Pang Feiji's wedding. Secondly, they were shocked that Li Zixuan would bring such valuable gifts. Everyone could not help but re-evaluate the relationship between Pang Feiji and Li Zixuan. Marquis, you're here? Quick, take a seat. Pang Feiji was also a little surprised. In his mind, Li Zixuan coming to attend his wedding banquet was already giving him face. He didn't expect Li Zixuan to not only come, but also bring so many congratulatory gifts. If you treat me like a country knight, I will repay you like a country knight. At this moment, he thought that even if Li Zixuan asked him to die immediately, he would be willing to do so without a frown. I was delayed by some things on the way. I should not have missed the timing. Otherwise, I would have sinned greatly. Li Zixuan nodded and said with a smile. Greetings, Marquis Yong'an. Next to Pang Feiji, the bride, Suo Shimu, who was dressed in red and covered with a veil, quickly came over and bowed to Li Zixuan. She did the standard etiquette of a Han woman. She must have put in a lot of effort in private. Greetings, Marquis. Everyone in the room recovered from their shock and hurriedly bowed to Li Zixuan. Among Pang Feiji's friends and relatives, some were from Lantian County, some were from Chang'an City, and some were from other counties around Chang'an City. However, no matter where they came from, They had all heard of Li Zixuan's name without exception. Most of them had even received favors from Li Zixuan. However, most of them had only heard of Li Zixuan's name in the past. Now that they were able to see him up close, they couldn't help but feel excited. At the same time, they couldn't help but secretly praise Pang Feiji for being so successful. Li Zixuan had personally come to support his wedding with a huge gift. There's no need to be so polite. I brought my wife here today to drink a cup of wine. We can't steal the limelight. Those who are supposed to get married, get married. Those who are supposed to get married, get married. There's no need to care about me. Don't miss the time. Li Zixuan waved his hand and said with an easygoing expression. Everyone could not help but breathe a sigh of relief when they saw Li Zixuan being so easygoing. Pang Feiji's mother, Madame Yu, walked over and bowed to Li Zixuan. I, Madame Yu, greet Marquis. It is the Pang family's honor that Marquis can attend my son's wedding. How can my son accept Marquis's generous gift? Li Zixuan turned his head to look at Han Yushi. Han Yushi understood and went forward to help Madame Yu up. Li Zixuan then said, Madame Yu, Feiji has done his best by my side. It can be said that he has worked hard and contributed a lot. I have never treated him as a servant. A mere gift is nothing. Don't decline anymore. Today is Feiji's wedding day. There are more important things to do. Seeing Li Zixuan's sincerity, Madame Yu could not decline anymore. She thanked him and then turned to look at Pang Feiji. She said seriously, My son, the Pang family has to have a conscience. Marquis has treated you so well. If you can't serve Marquis wholeheartedly in the future, I won't acknowledge you as my son. Do you hear me? Pang Feiji nodded heavily and said, Mother, you don't need to say this. I know. Don't worry. All right. Hurry up and get married. The guests are getting impatient from waiting. Li Zixuan urged at this moment. Madame Yu smiled and agreed. She also invited Li Zixuan to sit on the left side of the main hall. However, how could Li Zixuan be willing to sit there? This seat was usually reserved for the parents of the married people. He could not break the rules. All right. Deacon, please take your seat. The first gong, pray for good luck and eternal peace. The second gong, bless the newlyweds. The third gong, the auspicious time has arrived. Lanterns and colored banners will be hung and the auspicious stars will shine. Let's invite the bride and groom to the flower hall. Xiongde started to preside over the wedding ceremony. Li Zixuan, who was sitting at the head of the hall, almost spat out the tea in his mouth when he heard this. He thought to himself, where did this guy learn this from? It looked like it was true. However, this guy had to straighten his tongue when he spoke. Otherwise, it would sound too funny. First, bow to the heavens and earth to thank our marriage. Bow to thank the heavens for the auspicious signs. Bow to the heavens and earth for a long time. Pray for happiness and good health. Bow to the heavens 3 times. Rise. Bow to the parents for raising us. Bow to the heavens and earth. Thank the parents for raising us. Bow to the heavens and earth. 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 Pray for the heavens and earth. Bow to the heavens and earth. Rise. After the 3 bows to the parents, Pang Feiji paused. Then, he pulled Xiaomu and walked to Li Zixuan. The 2 of them knelt down together. Pang Feiji said, This bow is to thank Marquis for giving me a new life and for raising me. Feiji will go through fire and water for Marquis in the future. I won't hesitate. Xiaomu said, Thank you, Marquis Yong'an, for saving my life and giving me a good partner. Get up. Li Zixuan helped the 2 of them up. Then, he smiled meaningfully and said, Since the 2 of you are together, then live a good life. There is a saying, if you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If you marry a dog, follow the dog. Let's not delve into the past for now. But Xiaomu, since you are married to Pang Feiji, then you have to think about your husband's family. Feiji, if Xiaomu is really a virtuous wife, then you have to treat her well. With a harmonious and stable family as your backing, you can do things for me wholeheartedly. Do you hear me? The meaning behind these words was to warn Xiaomu that after marrying Pang Feiji, she had to completely become a Tang. She had to completely forget her identity as a Japanese. She had to forget about her country and her people. She had to think about her husband's family and the Tang Empire. She had to not do anything that would harm the interests of the Tang Empire. We will remember Marquis's teachings, Pang Feiji and Xia Mu said in unison. Alright, let's continue with the wedding ceremony. Li Zixuan waved his hand and said. The two of them hurriedly agreed. Xiongde then shouted, husband and wife, bow to each other. 100 years of cultivation to cross the sea together. 1,000 years of cultivation to sleep on the same pillow. The bride and groom face each other. Husband and wife bow to each other in front of the flower hall. Kneel. Heaven and earth meet, the zithers sing in harmony. Kowtow. Mandarin ducks wing to wing, husband and wife of one heart, kowtow again. Husband and wife sing together, you have a son early, kowtow thrice. Rise. The ceremony is complete, send the bride to the bridal chamber. After the wedding ceremony, it was time for the banquet. Li Zixuan had originally planned to drink a cup of wine before leaving with his wife. Many guests could not eat freely with him around. However, just as he was about to leave, he saw two familiar faces at the table beside him, Yan Xiaoning and Mo Lingwei. Little Ningzi, look at Pang Feiji and then look at yourself. Humph. Me? What's wrong with me? Humph. What's wrong with you? Oh. I understand now. Don't worry, where. I'll find a chance to talk to my father about us. I'll ask him to send a matchmaker to your house to propose marriage as soon as possible. Bah. Who wants you to propose marriage? You're really shameless. I'm going to ignore you. No, didn't Yamacho analyze me like this the last time? Don't you want to marry me? Hearing this, Li Zixuan was speechless. He really wanted to pick up a brick and smack Yan Xiaoning's head. He had seen emotional idiots before, but he had never seen such an idiot before. However, in order to avoid being entangled with these two infatuated men and women, Li Zixuan did not go over to greet them. He only informed Pang Feiji before leaving with Han Yushi. Today they had attended a wedding banquet. It wouldn't be long before they had to attend another wedding banquet. To be honest, Li Zixuan was very happy to see that his good brother Yan Xiaoning could find a good match. Yamacho, the workshop has already refined a batch of vanadium and produced 2 cans of concentrated sulfuric acid. Do you want to go over and take a look? The next day afternoon, Li Zixuan was about to go home when he met Wang Ji at the foot of the Cloud Mountain. Wang Ji stopped the carriage and said to Li Zixuan excitedly, "So fast." Li Zixuan was shocked. He had planned to come back to the Cloud Mountain to check on the progress in a few days, but he did not expect Wang Ji to produce concentrated sulfuric acid so quickly. This kind of progress was truly beyond his expectations. However, looking at Wang Ji's panda eyes and his face full of excitement, Li Zixuan immediately understood that Wang Ji's progress was so fast because this old man had stayed up late in the workshop again. "Mr. Wang, how many times have I told you? I told you not to stay up late and not to rush the progress. Why didn't you listen?" Li Zixuan looked at Wang Ji and reprimanded him. "Haha. Yamacho, it doesn't matter. I slept for more than 4 hours last night. I'm still energetic. Besides, there are electric lights in the workshop now. Working at night is almost the same as during the day." Chapter 1420. Besides, there are electric lights in the workshop now. Working at night is almost the same as during the day. Li Zixuan staggered and almost fell to the ground. He thought to himself, "So I invented the electric light just to make you stay up all night to work? Now that you mention it, I'm a bit like a black-hearted capitalist." "Mr. Wang, listen to my advice. Staying up all night is bad for your health. Don't stay up all night anymore. Whether it's the refining of vanadium or the production of sulfuric acid, you don't have to work so hard. If you hurt your health, it will be the greatest loss to the academy. Li Zishuan looked at Wang Ji and persuaded him earnestly. Wang Ji looked troubled. Yamacho, it's not that I like to stay up all night, but when I see those good materials, I feel a little itchy. If I can't refine these good materials into the things I want, I will feel uncomfortable all over. This is an old problem that can't be changed. But don't worry, my health is definitely fine. I know what to do. Li Zishuan was instantly speechless. He thought of his previous evaluation of Wang Ji, an alchemy warlock who was obsessed with alchemy. This evaluation was very appropriate. This old man used to love alchemy and did things that were superficial in the eyes of others. Now that he had entered the Academy's chemistry department, he had completely found his organization. Because the way of material transformation in chemistry was similar to alchemy, it was not difficult to understand why Wang Ji was crazy about it. Li Zishuan knew that no matter how he persuaded this crazy person, he would not be able to persuade him. He sighed and simply stopped persuading him. He walked to the front of the carriage and said to Han Yushi, "My wife, there are some things in the workshop. I won't return to the county today. I'll ask Lu Feng to escort you back." Han Yushi lifted the curtain and came out from inside. She said softly, "Since my husband has something to do, then go ahead and do it. I'll stay in the Yunshan residence for the next 2 days and take care of my husband's food and daily life." Li Zishuan thought for a while and nodded. "That's good too. I'll send someone back to the county to inform my parents. My wife, you can go back to the residence." "Okay." Li Zishuan asked Lu Feng to lead the guards to send Han Yushi back to Yunshan Villa. Then, he followed Wang Ji to the steel mill of the workshop. "Yamacho, look. This is the refined vanadium." In the steel mill, Wang Ji pointed at a sack and said to Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan walked over to take a look and saw pieces of light gray stones lying quietly inside. Compared to the freshly mined vanadium ore, these vanadium pieces that had been refined were undoubtedly more delicate in color. This is the only pure vanadium metal in the entire world. This thing has a lot of uses. It's not just used to make sulfuric acid. Mr. Wang, you have to take good care of it. Li Zishuan picked up 2 pieces of vanadium, weighed them in his hand and said to Wang Ji, "Yamacho, don't worry. Even if you don't say it, this old man will take good care of it." Wang Ji nodded and responded. Then, he said, "Yamacho, the sulfuric acid is stored in the steel tank in the warehouse. But for convenience, this old man put some in the glass bottle. Yamacho, can you take a look and see if the purity is enough?" "Okay." Li Zishuan nodded and followed Wang Ji to a small laboratory nearby. Wang Ji put on thick rubber gloves, took a bottle of transparent liquid from the shelf, and handed it to Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan took it and shook it slightly. Seeing that the liquid inside wasn't as agile as water, but was rather viscous, he nodded inwardly. This was because highly concentrated sulfuric acid was indeed a viscous liquid. "Have you roughly estimated the concentration of this sulfuric acid?" Li Zishuan turned his head to look at Wang Ji and asked. Wang Ji nodded and said, "This old man has calculated the ratio of raw materials input and output, as well as the total amount of water added. If we ignore the leakage of sulfur dioxide during the production process, the theoretical concentration of sulfuric acid is about 97%. But considering the various errors in the production process, the actual concentration of sulfuric acid should be about 90%. 90%? It's almost enough for our workshop to use in the future," Li Zishuan said with a gratified smile. Then, he opened the bottle cap, dipped a glass rod in a few drops of sulfuric acid, and dripped it on a piece of rice paper on the table. The paper quickly turned black where the sulfuric acid landed, and there was a burnt smell in the air. This was the strong dehydration of the sulfuric acid, causing the paper to be charred. Seeing this, Li Zixuan couldn't help but sigh. Very good. Now our workshop can finally produce sulfuric acid in batches. This is the cornerstone of the Tang Dynasty's chemical industry. The three industrial acids were nitric acid, sulfuric acid, and hydrochloric acid. Currently, the workshop could produce both sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid on a large scale. Electrolysis of salt water produces sodium hydroxide, hydrogen, and chlorine. Hydrogen can be burned in chlorine to produce hydrochloric acid. The only one left was nitric acid. The production of nitric acid was more complicated. The nitric acid industry was closely related to the ammonia industry. The workshop didn't have the catalysts needed, so this could only be left for the future. Mr. Wang, I will take some sulfuric acid with me in a while to make a battery that can last longer than the previous voltaic battery. As for the steel mill, I hope Mr. Wang can use the vanadium extracted from it to make vanadium steel. Li Zixuan paused for a moment and said, Vanadium steel? Could it be that Yamacho wants to add vanadium and charcoal to molten iron to make a new type of steel? Wang Ji's eyes lit up. This was the first time he heard Li Zixuan talk about using vanadium to make steel. Li Zixuan nodded and said, That's right, that's the gist of it. As for the specific ratio of each material, I will give you a few references later. Adding vanadium into the steel is like adding wings to a tiger. The function of vanadium in steel is to enhance the hardenability and carbide. It can also withstand high temperatures and has a strong secondary hardening effect. It has a significant effect on increasing the hardness by more than 3 times. Moreover, vanadium can refine the grains of the steel and stabilize the structure. It is more suitable for forging and polishing. It is simply a heaven-sent material for making weapons and armor. Increase the hardness by more than 3 times? Wang Ji's eyes widened in surprise when he heard Li Zixuan's words. However, he quickly realized that something was wrong. He quickly swallowed his saliva and said, Gulp, what? Yamacho wants to use vanadium steel to make weapons and armor? This must not be done. If someone finds out, even His Majesty won't let you off. This old man thought that Li Zixuan had become arrogant and wanted to make weapons and armor to rebel. He was so scared that his soul almost flew out of his body. However, his first reaction was to persuade Li Zixuan to lay down the butcher's knife, and not to expose him. This showed that he really cared about Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan knew that Wang Ji had misunderstood. He quickly said, What are you talking about, Mr. Wang? I do have the intention to make weapons and armor, but this is all under His Majesty's instructions. As for what His Majesty intends to use this batch of vanadium steel to make weapons and armor, I can't tell you in detail. Haha. Don't worry, I haven't had enough of being Xiaoyao Marquis and Xiaoyao Yamacho yet. How could he be so stupid as to rebel? I am very satisfied with my current life. Wang Ji heard this and couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, That's good. That's good. This old man was really scared out of his wits just now. Since it's His Majesty's orders, this old man naturally has no objections. Yamacho, after you give me the ratio formula, I will go and try to make vanadium steel. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wang. After Li Zixuan told Wang Ji the ratio of vanadium, carbon, and iron in the vanadium steel, he took away a can of concentrated sulfuric acid and left the steel mill. After leaving the steel mill, he came to the office building in the front yard of the workshop. There was a laboratory that belonged to Li Zixuan. Along the way, Li Zixuan turned down the good intentions of a few servants who wanted to help him carry the can of steel and arrived at his laboratory. After placing the can of sulfuric acid in the corner, Li Zixuan bent over the table and began to draw a blueprint. He was drawing the structure of the lead battery's shell. The negative plate, positive plate, and electrolyte were the main components of the lead battery's flow reaction. The anode plate was lead dioxide and the cathode plate was lead. When the battery is discharged, the negative electrode plate reacts with the electrolyte to become lead sulfate and water, releasing electric energy. When the battery is charged, under the action of external electric energy, the lead sulfate and the acid in the water reacts to form lead fluff and sulfuric acid, storing electric energy. In this way, a complete charging and discharging cycle could be formed. Compared to the commonly used modern lithium batteries, although lead batteries had less energy, that is, the amount of electricity stored per unit of weight was less. The main reason was that lead batteries were generally larger in size and weight, their electromotive force was more stable, their operating voltage was stable, their operating temperature and current range was wide, they could charge and discharge hundreds of cycles, their storage performance was good, especially suitable for dry charge storage, and their cost was lower. Therefore, they were widely used in the electric vehicle industry. Of course, the most important thing was that with the current conditions of the strange pavilion workshop, it was already very difficult to produce lead batteries. As for the higher-grade lithium batteries, that would have to wait. In addition, lead and lead dioxide were the materials for the battery electrode. These two materials already existed in this era. Lead was one of the earliest metals used by humans. In 3000 BC, humans already knew how to smelt lead from ore. The lead content in the Earth's crust was 0.0016%, and the main ore was galena. China also had a long history of using lead in ancient times. In ancient times, lead was one of the three main ingredients. Copper coins also contained a lot of lead, which was the largest amount of lead in ancient times. The more debased a currency was, the more lead it contained. For ancient necromancers, lead had another use, which was to refine elixirs. Lead and mercury were important components of elixirs. Of course, both of these things were poisonous. Therefore, since ancient times, none of the emperors who favored necromancers and consumed elixirs had lived long. With lead, sulfuric acid, and a good design of the shell structure, it was basically possible to make lead batteries. In his previous life, Li Zixuan had disassembled old lead batteries, so he was quite familiar with their internal structure. After about 15 minutes, Li Zixuan finished drawing the blueprint and walked out of the laboratory. "Faubert, get someone to follow this blueprint and use hard rubber to make a shell like this. I need it urgently." After arriving at Faubert's office, Li Zixuan passed the blueprint to Faubert and said, "Hard rubber was rubber with a high sulfur content. At a low temperature, the sulfur bonds could increase the range of movement between the chains, so the rubber would not harden. However, if more sulfur was added, for example, 25% to 50%, based on the weight of the rubber, the bonds between the chains would become even tighter, causing the rubber to harden. This type of rubber was called hard rubber. In the 21st century, the main material used for battery shells was ABS, high-strength and high-density plastic. However, when batteries first became popular, there was no such plastic. At that time, they used hard rubber. The current Tang Dynasty obviously did not have the conditions to produce ABS plastic, so Li Zixuan could only use hard rubber. For the current workshop, using hard rubber to make a battery shell was not difficult. It was all thanks to him sending people to Southeast Asia to look for rubber. Otherwise, many things could not be made now. Okay. This old man will arrange for someone to do it. The structure of the shell is not complicated. I estimate that it will be done in about 2 hours. Faubert took the blueprint and gave it a quick glance. The workshop had all kinds of ready-made machines, so he was confident that he could make the shell within 2 hours. He did not ask Li Zixuan the purpose of making the shell, because he knew that Li Zixuan was going to tinker with something new. As for what the new thing was, he would know when it was done. This was the tacit understanding that he had developed after following Li Zixuan for so long. Okay. Then I will have to trouble Faubert. Li Zishuan smiled. Faubert smiled and brought the blueprint to the yard where the rubber was produced. Li Zishuan, on the other hand, went to the courtyard where the glass was fired. This was because the partition in the modest battery was made of glass. About 4 hours later, the materials for the battery shell, cathode and anode plates, as well as the separator in the electrolyte were all prepared. Li Zishuan began to mix the electrolyte for the battery. This was very particular. Generally speaking, the sulfuric acid concentration of lead batteries was between 1.27 and 1.28. If the concentration was too low, it was easy to lose power. After a long period of use, lead sulfuric acid crystals would form between the two plates. It could not be removed during the recharging process and would become a blind spot. When the amount of lead sulfuric acid crystals formed reached a certain level, the battery would not be able to store power. Moreover, if the concentration of sulfuric acid was higher than the standard, lead sulfuric acid crystals would form easily. Therefore, the ratio of sulfuric acid to distilled water in the electrolyte must be strictly controlled. Just mixing the electrolyte took Li Zishuan more than half an hour. The next work was to assemble the prepared materials and the shell. This was not troublesome. The only thing to pay attention to was not to bring debris and dust into the electrolyte during the operation. Faubert stood aside and watched the entire process of making the lead battery. It was already dark, and the lights in the laboratory had been turned on by Faubert. At this time, Li Zishuan finally stood up, clapped his hands, and sighed in relief. Okay. The world's first lead battery is finally done. Chapter 14:21. Master, this thing is a battery? Do you want to try connecting a light bulb to it? In a laboratory in the workshop. When Faubert heard Li Zishuan say that the square thing in front of him was the first lead-acid battery in the world, he was shocked. Li Zishuan nodded and said, "Of course, we have to try it. Uncle Fu, can I trouble you to get someone to bring a low-powered light bulb and some wires?" When the lead-acid battery was first made, it did not need to be charged. It could be used directly because it was full of chemical energy. The so-called charging was to use the external electrical energy to regenerate the active material, lead sulfate, and store the electrical energy as chemical energy. Now that the battery was not discharging, there was no active material, lead sulfate, in the electrolyte. Naturally, there was no need to charge it. Okay. Master, wait a moment. Faubert smiled and left. After a while, Faubert brought Song Xiaoxi with a few light bulbs of different sizes and some copper wires. Li Zishuan removed the rubber on both ends of the wires. One end of the two wires was connected to the positive electrode of the battery, and the other end was connected to the positive and negative screw at the end of the light bulb. The moment the wires touched the end of the light bulb suddenly lit up. It lit up. It really lit up. It seems that the power of this lead-acid battery is stronger than the voltaic battery that you made before. This kind of light bulb can't be lit up by the voltaic battery. Faubert could not help but exclaim. When it came to electricity, he could be considered as half an expert. Although he did not speak as professionally as Wang Ji, he understood the general idea. Heh! Yamacho, your lead-acid battery is really a success? My goodness, it can light up such a big light bulb. What is the output voltage of this lead-acid battery? Speaking of the devil, Wang Ji came out of the steel mill to take a look. He did not expect to see this scene as soon as he stepped into the laboratory. He could not help but ask in surprise. Compared to Faubert, his question was obviously more professional. Li Zishuan smiled and replied, "In this lead-acid battery, the voltage of each battery pack is about 2 volt. There are a total of 6 battery packs connected in series, and the voltage is about 12 volt. Naturally, the voltage is higher than the voltaic battery. Moreover, the continuous discharge capacity of this lead-acid battery was much stronger than that of a voltaic battery. With just this small light bulb, it wouldn't be a problem to light it up for 24 hours. Moreover, after the battery is used up, it can be recharged. After recharging, it can be used again. 12 volts? Keep the lights on for 24 hours? Can it be recharged after the battery runs out? Wang Ji was really shocked this time. He had used the voltaic batteries made by Li Zixuan before. Each voltaic battery only had about 1 volt of power, and it did not last long. If it was used to send and receive telegrams, it would run out of power in less than 4 hours. Today's batteries, whether it was the output voltage or the ability to supply power for a long time, were far superior to the voltaic batteries. Moreover, the lead batteries could be recharged after they ran out of power, unlike the voltaic batteries which could only be thrown away after they ran out of power. These unparalleled and inconceivable advantages made Wang Ji doubt his life a little. Yamacho, can you tell me the principle behind the charging and discharging of this lead-acid battery? This is the first time I've heard of a battery that can be recharged and recycled. After a while, Wang Ji recovered from his shock and looked at Li Zixuan expectantly. Although it was already late, Li Zixuan knew that if he didn't explain the principle of charging and discharging lead-acid batteries to Wang Ji today, with this old man's temperament, he probably wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. In order to let the old man sleep well, Li Zixuan took out a piece of blank rice paper and wrote a chemical equation on it with a pencil as he began to explain. Mr. Wang, the material of the anode plate of this battery is lead dioxide, and the material of the cathode plate is lead. The electrolyte is prepared dilute sulfuric acid. There is a separator in the electrolyte to separate the electrolyte between the two electrodes and prevent the electrodes from shorting. When discharging electricity, the lead in the cathode plate reacts with the electrolyte to produce lead sulfate and water, releasing electricity. When charging the battery, under the action of external electricity, the lead sulfate reacts with the acid in the water to produce lead fluff and sulfuric acid, storing electricity. It took nearly half an hour to explain the charging and discharging principle of the battery to Wang Ji. During this time, Wang Ji raised a lot of technical questions, and Li Zixuan patiently answered them one by one. When everything was finished, it was already close to midnight. Yamacho, this lead-acid battery is really amazing, especially now that we have a hydropower station in Lantian County and Yanhuang College is connected to electricity. The role of this battery is even more obvious. After using up the electricity outside, it can be recharged with electricity from the hydropower station. Perfect. It's simply perfect. This old man is truly in awe of Mountain Chieftain's ingenuity. Wang Ji's eyes became brighter and brighter, and the gaze he looked at the lead-acid battery became more and more passionate. At this time, he suddenly remembered that he came here to find Li Zixuan for business, and quickly said, "Oh, Yamacho, the steel mill has already produced vanadium steel. This old man has done some experiments in private, and this vanadium steel is indeed much harder than ordinary steel. Yamacho, do you want to go take a look?" Li Zixuan looked at the dark sky outside and couldn't help but ask, "Faubert, what time is it now?" After transmigrating for so long, Li Zixuan still couldn't accurately determine the time. He estimated that he wouldn't be able to practice this skill in his lifetime. He could only wait until the invention of the watch, and then he would be able to completely control time. "Young master, it should be midnight now." Faubert was silent for a moment and then replied. Midnight, which was 9 o'clock in the evening. He actually worked from 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 o'clock in the evening, and he didn't even eat dinner in the middle. Not only did he not eat dinner, but Faubert and Wang Ji also didn't eat. I'm not looking. I'll look tomorrow." "It's not early today, Mr. Wang. Faubert, this man is iron, rice is steel, everyone go back early to eat and rest. Our bodies are the capital for our inventions. At this time, Wang Ji, a workaholic, actually wanted to drag him to the steel mill to work. Li Zixuan would never do that, even if he was beaten to death. He still had a wife and children at home. Oh, he didn't have any children yet, but he couldn't go back too late and make his wife worry, right? Therefore, he waved his hand and said to Wang Ji and Faubert, Young master is right, then this old man will go first. I'm old, I can't handle it, Faubert said with a smile. Wang Ji was unwilling, but seeing that Faubert had said so, he couldn't disagree, so he could only pack up and leave the workshop with Li Zixuan. They went up Yun Mountain. He was now living in the academy's teacher's dormitory, not Yun Mountain residence, because his title had not reached the level of a professor. However, based on Wang Ji's enthusiasm in chemistry and his recent results, it was only a matter of time before he became a professor in the academy. Husband, you're back? You haven't eaten yet, right? I'll heat up the food for you now. When they returned to the residence, Han Yushi heard the movement at the door, and quickly came out of the house to welcome them. Obviously, she hadn't slept, waiting for Li Zixuan to come back. Wife, why aren't you asleep at this time? It's all my fault. I was so busy in the workshop that I forgot the time and forgot to send someone to tell you, Li Zixuan said apologetically. Husband, don't say that. Han Yushi hurriedly said, You're busy in the workshop, and it's not midnight yet, so I'm not sleepy. Alright, let's not talk about it. I'm going to warm up with my husband. Li Zixuan hugged Han Yushi and kissed her gently on the forehead. He said, My wife is so considerate, I'll give you something good in a few days. Han Yushi asked curiously, What good thing? Li Zixuan smiled mysteriously and said, I'll keep it a secret for now, but it'll definitely be a big surprise. The next day, Li Zixuan went to the workshop again after breakfast. Speaking of which, he was now sitting in the position of Marquis. Logically speaking, he didn't have to work so hard. Even if he ate, drank, and played every day, with the huge foundation he had built previously, he could guarantee that he wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of his life. When he first transmigrated, Li Zixuan thought that as long as he could be a marquis, he would spend his life waiting for death. However, sometimes, only when you really sat in that position would you understand your responsibilities. Li Zixuan was now the Yamacho of Yanhuang College, the real master of tens of thousands of people in Lantian County, and the helmsman of the entire Yanhuang Corporation. Behind him, countless students were learning from him, improving and growing. Countless people were relying on him to eat. Countless craftsmen were using his innovative technology and tools to liberate productivity, and countless merchants were relying on him to become rich and realize their own value. He couldn't stop. His position as marquis was created by the invention of engineering. Therefore, he had the obligation to bring engineering to greater heights in this era. Moreover, to him, creating modern things in the ancient times was where his joy lay. He wanted and was willing to make this Tang dynasty even more advanced and powerful. When he arrived at the steel mill, Wang Ji was already waiting there. These 2 days were the weekend of the academy, so old Wang didn't have any classes at the academy. He could also devote himself to scientific research. Yamacho, look. This is vanadium steel. This is vanadium steel that was refined according to the 3 different vanadium ratios that Yamacho provided. Wang Ji pointed at the pile of steel on the ground and said to Li Zixuan, Let's use this vanadium steel to make swords and armor first, then we'll test it out. Li Zixuan nodded and said, The ratio of vanadium in vanadium steel was generally not high, around 0.25% to 0.59%. Different ratios of vanadium would result in different hardness of vanadium steel. As for which ratio was the most suitable for making swords and sabers, and which was the most suitable for making armor, all of these would need to be tested. In addition, By adding a certain ratio of vanadium to the steel, one could make rebar that could be used as the framework of reinforced concrete. Compared to ordinary steel, rebar's hardness and toughness were both very good. It was suitable to be used as the framework of reinforced concrete in large projects. It could significantly increase the strength of the project and increase the level of earthquake resistance. All right. Then, Yamacho, please wait a moment. Wang Ji nodded in response. There were all kinds of craftsmen in the workshop, and naturally, there was no lack of skilled blacksmiths. Wang Ji sent the vanadium steel to the blacksmith's workshop and instructed the blacksmiths to use the 3 different ratios of vanadium steel to make 3 sets of swords and armor. The blacksmith's workshop immediately began to bustle with activity. Yamacho, do you think that the swords and sabers made of vanadium steel will be so sharp that they can cut through metal like mud? As for armor, will the armor made of vanadium steel be stronger than the armor used by Tang soldiers? The temperature in the blacksmith's workshop was too high. Wang Ji was old and could not withstand the heat. After he finished instructing the craftsmen, he left the workshop to find Li Zixuan and asked. Li Zixuan smiled and nodded. Although I wouldn't dare to say that they can cut through metal like mud, if ordinary iron swords and sabers were to meet vanadium steel swords and sabers, they would definitely suffer great damage. As for armor, I have even more confidence in it. Armor made of vanadium steel is definitely superior under the same conditions. Vanadium alloying could greatly increase the strength of carbon steel, especially under the conditions of quenching and tempering. The improvement in performance was even more obvious. In his previous life, a fortuitous event led to the use of vanadium in automobile steel. It was said that when Henry Ford I was watching a race, a French car was crashed. When he examined the wreckage of the car, he found that the damage of a crankshaft produced in Sweden was much smaller than expected. After testing, it was found that the steel contained vanadium. Therefore, Ford used vanadium-alloyed steel to make the key parts of the Ford car to better resist the vibration and fatigue of the road. He once famously said, "If there was no vanadium, there would be no cars." Because a very small amount of vanadium could give the steel excellent performance, people at that time had a very vivid evaluation of the role of vanadium in steel. Vanadium was the vitamin in steel. Thus, when vanadium steel was used to make armor, although it was not absolutely invulnerable, it was definitely able to resist most cold weapons. This is amazing. Who would have thought that just adding a little vanadium to steel could greatly improve the performance of the steel? This is really incredible. Wang Ji muttered to himself. Mr. Wang, wait here. I'll go draw a blueprint. I'm planning to make something new. Li Zixuan knew that forging the swords and armor was not something that could be done in a short period of time. It would take at least half a day, so he said to Wang Ji. When Wang Ji heard this, his eyes lit up. Oh? Yamacho has a good idea again? I wonder what new thing you want to make this time? Mr. Wang, you will know in a while. When the armor is done, remember to send someone to inform me. Li Zixuan did not say anything, so Wang Ji smiled. When Wang Ji saw this, he did not ask further. Li Zixuan returned to his office in the workshop and began to draw the blueprint. At noon, Song Xiaoxi brought him lunch. He finished it quickly and continued to draw the blueprint. There was a thick stack of blueprints on his desk. It was obvious that the thing he was going to make this time was not simple. Mountain Leader, the swords and armors are ready. Take a look. At around 5 in the afternoon, Wang Ji came to Li Zixuan's office with 2 manservants, carrying 3 pairs of swords and armors, and said excitedly, "Oh? How is the effect? Mr. Wang, have you tried it?" Li Zixuan put down his pen, stood up and asked with a smile. I've tried it. This sword was just like what the mountain leader had said. It could easily cut through ordinary swords and sabers made of iron. It's really sharp. As for the armor, even arrows can't penetrate it. It's really tough. Wang Ji said ecstatically. Chapter 1422. Oh? Let me try. In the workshop's office building, Li Zixuan received a sword made of vanadium steel. After examining it for a moment, he could not help but exclaim, "The blade is slender and the blade is like autumn frost. It has a cold light and it feels very good in my hand. Just based on its appearance, it is already better than 95% of the swords on the market. Not bad, not bad. The craftsman who forged this sword is very skilled. He should be rewarded." Li Zixuan nodded his head in satisfaction. At this moment, he took out a metal rod from the corner behind the door. This metal rod was purely made of iron. There was no charcoal in it, and it could not even be considered steel. In fact, although there was already steelmaking technology in ancient times, it was only in some steelmaking workshops under the control of the imperial court. Most of the ironware used by the common people in their daily lives was still pure iron, and there was very little steel. Li Zixuan picked up the vanadium steel sword and lightly waved it. Without using any internal force, he casually slashed at the metal rod. With a king sound, a 3mm deep sword mark was left on the metal rod. This was already quite impressive. After all, he had just waved it casually. If he had used his full strength or even his internal force, he was confident that he could have used this vanadium steel sword to slash the metal rod in his hand. Although this degree of sharpness was not as good as his wind-chasing sword, it had already far surpassed the weapons of this era. Li Zixuan turned around and looked at the armor made of vanadium steel that Wang Ji was holding. This was a radiant armor. The origin of the name, radiant armor, was said to be related to the circular shield on the chest and back. This was because the circular shield was mostly made of copper and other metals. It was polished to the point that it looked like a mirror. When wearing the radiant armor on the battlefield, due to the sun's rays, it would emit a dazzling, radiant light, hence the name. The radiant armor had an extremely long history. It was already in existence during the Three Kingdoms period. During the Sui and Tang dynasties, the most commonly used armor was the radiant armor and the dual crotch armor. The dual crotch armor was usually made of small scales. The length of the dual crotch armor extended to the abdomen, replacing the leather armor skirt of the Sui dynasty. The lower part of the armor was shaped like a crescent moon or lotus leaf. It was used to protect the lower abdomen. These improvements greatly increased the defense below the waist. Other than these two types of armor, the Tang dynasty also developed many new types of armor. According to the 6 classics of the Tang dynasty, there were 12 other types of armor, such as light, fine scale, mountain inscriptions, bird hammer, white cloth, soap, cloth back, infantry, leather, wooden, chain, and so on. Among them, light essences, lock, mountain inscriptions, bird hammer, and fine-scale armor were iron armors. The latter 3 were named after the style of the armors. Leather armor, wood armor, white cloth, soap cloth, and cloth back were named after the materials used to make them. The design of this Mingguang armor is very good. Could the craftsman who made it have worked in the works supervisor or the Ministry of Works before? Li Zixuan asked softly as he touched the smooth surface of the armor. Wang Ji smiled and replied, "Yamacho has a good eye. The name of the blacksmith who made this armor is Zhang Hongsheng. His father is Zhang Kajiu, who used to be a famous blacksmith in the General Works Bureau. His qualifications and skills are not below Minister Yan's. However, he is old now, so he retired from the bureau and took over his father's work. Zhang Hongsheng inherited Zhang Kajiu's skills in sword and armor forging. Although he only inherited 50 to 60% of it, he is the most skilled blacksmith in the workshop." Zhang Kajiu? When Li Zixuan heard this name, he found it familiar. After muttering it twice, his face suddenly changed. He exclaimed, "Zhang Kajiu? Mr. Wang, are you saying that Zhang Hongsheng's father is Zhang Kajiu?" Zhang Kajiu used to work in the works supervisor? He was also Minister Yan's colleague? Zhang Kajiu was the most famous craftsman in the Tang Dynasty. His Kajiu sword was ranked 14th in China's ancient weapon ranking. The famous poet of the Tang Dynasty, Bai Juyi, once wrote a poem about the Kajiu sword. The poem said, 1,000 years after Ojizi's death, the elves secretly taught Zhang Kajiu. Kajiu forged the sword in Wu Mountain. In the poem, Bai Juyi believed that Zhang Kajiu's craftsmanship was taught to him by Ojizi 1,000 years ago. As for who Ojizi was, anyone with a little knowledge of history would know. Ojizi was the founder of ancient craftsmanship in China and the creator of the dragon's spring sword. When Ojizi was born, the Eastern Zhou dynasty was in conflict. First, the Wu kingdom conquered the Chu kingdom. Later, the Wu kingdom annexed 45 kingdoms to the south of the Yangtze River. When he was young, he learned metallurgy from his uncle and began to forge bronze swords, iron hoes, iron axes, and other tools. He discovered the difference between copper and iron and forged his first iron sword, the Qixing Longyuan sword, or Longyuan sword for short. In the Tang dynasty, to avoid the taboo of Emperor Gaozu Li Yuan, he changed the word Yuandequan and called it the Qixing Longquan sword. It was the first cold weapon in China. Bai Juyi believed that Zhang Kajiu's craftsmanship was taught to him by Ojizi. From this, it could be seen that Zhang Kajiu's craftsmanship was superb. However, there were almost no records of Zhang Kajiu's life in the history books. They could only guess from some ancient poems. As for his birth date and history, there were no records. Li Zishuan didn't expect to hear about Zhang Kajiu in the early years of the Tang dynasty. Moreover, this old man was once a works supervisor. How could he not be shocked? Yamacho also knows Zhang Kajiu? Haha. Zhang Kajiu is famous for his craftsmanship, so it's normal for Marquis to know him. This person did indeed serve as a works supervisor for a period of time. When the current emperor was still the king of Qin, he loved swords. When he heard that Zhang Kajiu's craftsmanship was superb, he sent someone to invite Zhang Kajiu to make a sword. However, Zhang Kajiu was arrogant and refused the emperor's request. However, the emperor was magnanimous and didn't get angry. Instead, he personally visited Zhang Kajiu. After 3 visits, Zhang Kajiu finally agreed to leave the mountain and become a works supervisor. The emperor's current sword was made by Zhang Kajiu. Wang Ji explained with a smile. Li Zishuan nodded in realization. He didn't expect there to be such a past. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He asked, Zhang Yaju is a famous swordsmith and was once highly regarded by the current emperor. Even if he is old now and has retired from his position as a supervisor, he should at least not have to worry about food and clothing, right? Why would he let his son work in our workshop? Wang Ji frowned and couldn't help but ask, Yamacho, what do you mean by that? Don't tell me all the craftsmen come to our workshop for money? Don't you allow people to come here for their own interests and to realize their dreams? Old Wang was obviously hurt by Li Zishuan's words. As the leader of the chemistry department of Yanhuang College, his monthly salary wasn't small. He didn't lack money, but didn't he work in the workshop every day? He was doing it for his dreams. Li Zishuan knew that he said the wrong thing and had an embarrassed look on his face. He hurriedly said, Cough, cough. Mr. Wang, that's not what I meant. I meant that since Zhang Hongxing's father was a works supervisor, why didn't he recommend Zhang Hongxing to be a works supervisor? Why did he allow his son to work in our workshop? Hearing this, old Wang relaxed and said, Yamacho, you'll have to ask Manager Fu. Zhang Hongxing was recruited by Manager Fu. I don't know the details. Haha. Zhang Hongxing was personally invited by this old man. At that time, I told him that we have countless good materials for forging swords in our workshop. As long as he came, all the materials would be given to him. Zhang Hongxing is like his father and loves forging swords. When he heard this old man's condition, he readily agreed. At this moment, Faubert came in from outside and said as he walked. Obviously, he had been eavesdropping outside the room for a while. Li Zixuan heard this and suddenly felt a little funny. He said, Faubert only used some materials to recruit a master craftsman for the workshop. Amazing! Amazing! These words were sincere. Li Zixuan, who came from an engineering background, valued skills and talents the most. As long as you had skills, money wasn't a problem, and materials were even less of a problem. If all the technical talents in this world could be recruited with some materials like Zhang Hongxing, Li Zixuan didn't want to talk too much. He wanted to recruit 3,000 people first. Faubert laughed bitterly and said helplessly, Young master, you don't know how much materials Zhang Hongxing used. Every time the workshop got good materials for forging swords, he would fight for them. If I didn't give them to him, I would break my promise. If I gave them to him, it would affect the task that you gave me. Just now, he ran over to me and asked if there was a new type of steel called vanadium steel in the workshop. He wanted me to give him 200 caddies first because he wanted to practice swords. I know that the vanadium steel was refined using the vanadium or that you obtained with great difficulty. How could I be willing to give it to him? So he started to make a fuss at my place, saying that I didn't keep my promise. This old man had no choice but to seek help from young master. Li Zixuan couldn't help but laugh and said, Ha ha! Give it to him. Give him 200 caddies. Doesn't this Zhang Hongxing like forging weapons? I happen to have a new set of armor here and I need his help to forge it. Song Xiaoxi, go to Faubert's place and invite Zhang Hongxing over. Yes, young master. Song Xiaoxi responded and quickly ran out. After a while, under Song Xiaoxi's lead, a man in his late 20s, shirtless, walked in from outside. Zhang Hongxing pays his respects to Marquis. After entering the office, Song Xiaoxi tugged at Zhang Hongxing's sleeve and then secretly pointed at Li Zixuan. Zhang Hongxing then saluted Li Zixuan. No need to be so polite. Li Zixuan smiled and went forward to help Zhang Hongxing up. He then asked, I heard that you wanted 200 caddies of vanadium steel from Faubert? Zhang Hongxing's heart tightened. At this moment, he saw that Faubert was still standing in the room. In an instant, he figured out what was going on and thought that Faubert was complaining about him. Therefore, he said angrily, Marquis, when I first entered this workshop, Manager Fu promised me that as long as I wanted rare materials for swords, he would try his best to satisfy me. I've only been in the workshop for 3 months. Does Marquis want Manager Fu to go back on his word? Looking at this guy's stiff neck and glaring eyes, looking as if he was looking for a fight, Faubert quickly frowned and reprimanded him. Zhang Hongxing, don't be rude in front of Marquis. Besides, no one wants to go back on their word. Ha ha. Faubert, it's okay. It's okay. Li Zixuan waved his hand and wasn't angry at all. Since ancient times, people with great skills tended to have bad tempers. Li Zixuan was very patient with such people. When Zhang Hongxing heard the second half of Faubert's words, he was stunned. Not going back on his word? That was to say, Li Zixuan called him over to give him vanadium steel? Thinking of this, Zhang Hongxing immediately changed his expression and cupped his hands to Li Zixuan. Marquis, please forgive me. I was anxious and offended, Marquis. I hope that Marquis will forgive me. Li Zixuan smiled and said, It's okay. The 200 caddies of vanadium steel you asked for from Manager Fu was approved by this Marquis. You can go to the steel mill to get it later. Thank you, Marquis. Zhang Hongxing was overjoyed and quickly cupped his hands. At the same time, he thought that this young Marquis was quite easy to talk to. 2 months ago, after Zhang Hongxing was seduced by Faubert to the workshop, he had been immersed in the blacksmith workshop studying the art of sword forging. Usually, he didn't see Li Zixuan. Even if he did, no one introduced him to him and he didn't know him. Today was his first meeting with Li Zixuan. In the morning, Wang Ji gave him a new batch of steel and asked him to forge 3 swords and 3 sets of armor. At that time, he didn't think much of it and thought that there was no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken, so he planned to let his disciple forge it. But inadvertently, he found that the quality of the steel was very hard. It was something he had never seen before in his life. Thus, out of curiosity, he personally forged the swords and armor in Li Zixuan's office. Of course, he was quite satisfied with the sharpness of the swords that were finally forged. When Wang Ji went to his place in the afternoon to pick up the goods, he couldn't help but ask Wang Ji what kind of steel it was. After knowing that it was vanadium steel, he eagerly ran to Faubert to ask for the materials. That was why such a farce happened. This marquis has long heard of your father's name. I heard that you, Hongxing, have inherited your father's skills in sword forging. This marquis has a sword here. How about you help me take a look? When Li Zixuan saw Zhang Hongxing's happy face, he thought that this technical talent wasn't that difficult to deal with. In order to pursue the victory, he took off the long sword at his waist and said to Zhang Hongxing. Zhang Hongxing didn't think much of it. He thought to himself, what kind of good sword can a wealthy marquis have? But in order to obtain the vanadium steel as soon as possible, he still cooperated. Understood. May marquis lend me the sword to take a look? Here you go. Li Zixuan's lips curled into a mischievous smile. Together with the scabbard, he lightly tossed it to Zhang Hongxing. When Zhang Hongxing saw how casually Li Zixuan tossed it, he guessed that the sword was very light. Thus, he also casually used one hand to catch the sword. In the end, tragedy befell him in the blink of an eye. Io. When the wind-chasing sword touched Zhang Hongxing's hand, Zhang Hongxing realized that something was wrong. But at this moment, even if he wanted to use both hands to catch the sword, it was too late. He could only watch as his body was brought down by the wind-chasing sword. Seeing that his entire body was about to hit the ground, he suddenly felt a gust of wind in front of him. Following that, a hand grabbed his shoulder, preventing him from falling any further. In a flash, Li Zixuan appeared in front of him and supported him. Brother Zhang, I'm sorry. This marquis forgot to tell you that this sword is rather heavy. I'm sorry for startling you. Li Zixuan hurriedly apologized. This apology immediately caused Zhang Hongxing's face to turn red. He waved his hand in shame and said, "This Zhang's knowledge is shallow. I didn't know that there was such a small sword in this world, but it's extremely heavy. It's no wonder marquis. This Zhang shall taste this sword for marquis." Saying which, Zhang Hongxing's heart was filled with amazement. He thought to himself, what kind of strange sword is this? Just based on its size and shape, it doesn't seem any different from an ordinary sword. But why is it so heavy? At the very least, this sword is 3 to 4 times heavier than an ordinary sword. It was precisely because of this that he was caught off guard and almost fell to the ground because of this sword. In the end, he couldn't suppress the curiosity in his heart. Zhang Hongxing stood up straight and slowly pulled out the wind-chasing sword from the scabbard. Instantly, he was stunned. Chapter 1423. The sword is 3 feet long, and its body is as smooth as a mirror. The blade is as thin as a cicada's wing, and there is a cold light in the middle that seems to be constantly flowing. This sword can break the clouds and destroy the earth. What a good sword! It is truly a good sword. But the weight of this sword is actually more than 40 pounds. How is this possible? No. Marquis, this sword is definitely not made of ordinary metal. Could it be? Could it be made of Xian metal? In Li Zixuan's office in the workshop of the strange interest pavilion, Zhang Hongxing tightly gripped Li Zixuan's wind-chasing sword as if he was admiring a peerless beauty. He greedily poured his gaze onto the mirror-like smooth and cold blade. The more he looked, the more excited he became. In the end, he raised his head to look at Li Zishuan in disbelief, and asked in a trembling voice. The sharpness of this sword had already surpassed the 9-crow sword that his father had spent his entire life forging. How could he not be shocked? But the moment he looked up, a strand of hair in front of him accidentally fell on the blade. Everyone saw that the strand of hair was easily cut off the moment it touched the blade. Then, the strand of hair gently fell to the ground. Cutting off a strand of hair. How terrifying! This was truly cutting off a strand of hair. Faubert, Wang Ji, Zhang Hongxing, Song Xiaoxi, and the rest could not help but gasp. This kind of sharp divine weapon that only existed in ancient legends was actually seen by them today. At this time, Li Zishuan smiled at Zhang Hongxing and said, "Brother Zhang, you guessed right. This sword is indeed not made of ordinary metal. It is made of Xian metal." Gulp! Zhang Hongxing fiercely swallowed his saliva. At this time, he had completely let go of the arrogance of a swordsmithing clan's descendant, because the sword in Li Zishuan's hand was more awesome than any sword he had ever seen. What right did he have to be arrogant? Therefore, he handed the wind-chasing sword to Li Zishuan with a face full of admiration and said, "How can such a peerless sword not have a name? Marquis, please tell me which famous sword this is? Which famous swordsmith made it?" Li Zishuan replied in a low voice, "This sword is called the wind-chasing sword. My master obtained it by chance from an otherworldly expert when he was traveling the world. As for who forged it, I don't know." Wind-chasing sword? What a good name! It's a pity that I don't know which famous artist it came from," Zhang Hongxing murmured. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and said, "Marquis, this Zhang has a presumptuous request. I hope that Marquis will grant it." Li Zishuan took a deep look at Zhang Hongxing. His eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. He smiled and said, "You want to borrow this sword to bring it back for your father to take a look?" Zhang Hongxing was taken aback and then said with some embarrassment, "Yes, yes, Marquis. My father spent his entire life pursuing the ultimate path of swordsmithing. This wind-chasing sword, whether it is the material or the craftsmanship, is a peerless sword that this Zhang has never seen before. My father will definitely be happy when he sees it. He is already very old, and as his son, the only thing I can do is to make him happy while he is still alive so that he won't have any regrets." Senior Zhang's lifelong pursuit of the ultimate path of the sword is indeed admirable, but this wind-chasing sword was left behind by my master. How can this Marquis so easily lend it out? Li Zishuan softly sighed and then changed the topic. Zhang Hongxing's expression immediately darkened. He thought to himself that he was overthinking things. Who would be willing to lend out such a peerless sword? Furthermore, this wind-chasing sword was left behind by Li Zishuan's master when he was alive. Its significance was extraordinary. But at this moment Li Zishuan said again, "However, on account of your filial piety, it's not that I can't lend you this sword, but you have to promise to help me forge a new set of armor. After you agree, I will immediately lend you the sword and allow you to lend it for 3 days." Zhang Hongxing's eyes lit up as he hurriedly said, "Marquis, I agree. I agree. Not to mention a set of armor, even if you want me to forge 100 or 1,000 sets of armor, I'm willing." Li Zishuan found it somewhat funny and said, "Brother Zhang, this Marquis hasn't even said what kind of armor I want you to forge yet, and you're already agreeing so readily?" Zhang Hongxing said confidently, "Marquis, it's not that I want to boast, but I can forge all kinds of armor from the past dynasties, such as rattan armor, black armor, sleeve armor, double crotch armor, light armor, fine scale armor, Shanwen armor, Mingguang armor, and so on. Marquis, why don't you tell me what kind of new armor you want me to forge?" Zhang Hongxing was bragging happily when he suddenly remembered the embarrassing incident of almost falling down when he received the sword. He felt that he couldn't speak so confidently in front of Li Zishuan, otherwise, he would easily fall down. After all, he was someone who had suffered a loss once. Everyone couldn't help but laugh when they heard Zhang Hongxing's incoherent words and his obvious cowardice at the critical moment. The main reason was that this guy was too King realistic, wasn't he? Li Zishuan didn't laugh. He turned around and picked up a stack of drawings on the desk, then took out 4 of them. Then, he gestured for everyone to come to his side. He spread out the drawings and said, "Brother Zhang, the armor I want you to forge is called plate armor. The so-called plate armor is not just a piece of iron plate. It has to be light and portable, flexible at the joints, and cover the whole body." Here, this is the drawing. Among the many drawings he drew in the office this morning, one of them was drawing armor. Everyone looked at the drawing and couldn't help but widen their eyes. Zhang Hongxing couldn't help but exclaim, This plate armor is actually covering the whole body? Although this defense is indeed more comprehensive than the Mingguang armor, if the whole body is used for defense, how heavy would this set of plate armor be? If soldiers wear it, how can they walk? Not to mention fighting. Li Zishuan explained at the side, as for how heavy this set of plate armor is, we will talk about it later. First, I will explain the structure of this plate armor to you. This set of plate armor is composed of a helmet, armor, breastplate, back armor, shoulder armor, wrist armor, elbow armor, leg armor, shin armor, and steel shoes. The joints are stacked with multiple layers of movable steel plates, which can ensure that the soldier's movements in battle won't be hindered. The inside of the shoulder armor doesn't use steel plates and maintains a hollow structure, thus allowing the limbs to have more room to move. The joints connecting the body and other parts are lined with deerskin or linen, and interlocking chain mail is used to protect the inside. This way, the weight of the entire armor is borne by the whole body, and it is also comfortable to wear. The breastplate of this plate armor is made up of 3 pieces. The middle piece is narrower and serves as a connection. This structure also allows the breastplate to have a certain degree of mobility, allowing the wearer to move more flexibly. Of course, the biggest feature of this set of plate armor is the use of the neck armor. A simple helmet couldn't protect the parts below the mouth, but this set of plate armor used a large neck guard with a jaw guard to achieve the effect of complete protection of the face. For the purpose of insurance, this set of plate armor also used armpit guards to protect the armpit. In addition, the surface of the plate armor is designed with ridges to strengthen the protective effect and reduce the weight. This way, all parts of the human body are within the steel armor. On the battlefield, it is completely impenetrable and unafraid of a rain of arrows. In fact, the plate armor that Li Zishuan wanted to make was called Gothic plate armor. In his previous life, he was not only an engineering student, but also a military enthusiast. He had seen many disassembled pictures of ancient countries' armor on the internet. Plate armor was known as the king of armor, and it was the symbol of medieval knights. It was the ultimate defense of the cold weapon era. In the 100 years of war between England and France, there was no record of an arrow being able to penetrate plate armor. Later on, when firearms were introduced, plate armor was so strong that it could even withstand the damage of ordinary matchlock guns. From the 14th century to the 15th century, the progress in the structure and shape of armor was very obvious. The most famous plate armor in the history of the world, the Gothic and the Milanese plate armor, began to appear at this time. Because the former became popular in Milan, while the latter was greatly influenced by the Gothic art style, these 2 styles of armor were called the Milanese and the Gothic. However, whether it was the Milanese style or the Gothic style, both originated from Italy. It was just that the Germans had developed the Gothic style to its peak, causing many people to mistakenly believe that the Gothic style originated from Germany. Among all the plate armors, these 2 were the most popular. It wasn't that there were no other styles, but they were all imitations of these 2 styles. The Milanese style was characterized by its smooth lines, close-fitting, elegant, and beautiful design. The Gothic style was simple, full of functional beauty, with many edges and corners, and good movement. Wonderful work of art! It is indeed wonderful work of art! With these designs, it is indeed possible to protect the whole body without affecting the movement of the body's joints. But how heavy is this set of plate armor? Can the soldiers bear it? Zhang Hongxing couldn't help but exclaim. The Tang Dynasty's Mingguang armor was considered the most advanced and defensive armor in the Tang Dynasty. However, compared to the full-body plate armor designed by Li Zixuan, it paled in comparison. However, the only thing that Zhang Hongxing was worried about was the weight of the full-body plate armor. The rest of the people also looked at Li Zixuan doubtfully. Obviously, everyone agreed that the defense of the plate armor was far superior to the Mingguang armor. The only thing they were worried about was the weight. Li Zixuan smiled slightly and said, "Haha, you don't have to worry about the weight. This kind of plate armor is at its peak. The weight of a full-body plate armor will definitely not exceed 40 pounds. As for the Mingguang armor, it should be around 50 pounds, right? At the same level of defense, the plate armor is definitely lighter than the Mingguang armor." Li Zixuan wasn't bragging. In the modern era, when plate armor was mentioned, people's first reaction was that it was heavy and inflexible. In fact, this was a misunderstanding of plate armor. In fact, plate armor was not only flexible, but also light. A full body of Gothic plate armor would not exceed 25 pounds. 1 pound in the Tang Dynasty was about 600 grams in the modern era, so 25 pounds would be about 40 pounds in the Tang Dynasty. A full body of Mingguang armor would weigh about 30 pounds. A soldier wearing Gothic plate armor could even perform all kinds of difficult movements. It was very flexible. Moreover, the plate armor made by a skilled armor master could not even fit a piece of paper in between the plates. Its defense was simply too good. It was like a beggar's version of Iron Man, and Li Zixuan wanted to make 5,000 of such Iron Man. How is this possible? This set of armor is definitely more than 40 pounds. Zhang Hongxing shook his head fiercely, his face full of disbelief. Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Brother Zhang, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. I don't intend to use the casting method for this plate armor. I want to use the forging method to polish the plate armor to about this thickness." As he spoke, Li Zixuan used his hand to indicate a thickness of about 5 millimeters. Not only was the forged armor thin, but it was also stronger than cast armor. This was already an indisputable fact. Forging? Such a thin thickness? And you want to ensure that the thickness is uniform? Zhang Hongxing was a little troubled. "Marquis, according to your request, it's not impossible, but it's extremely time-consuming and laborious. I can still make 1 or 2 pieces, but if there are too many of them, I really can't do anything." At this time, Zhang Hongxing was very glad that he stopped in time when he was bragging. Otherwise, he would have embarrassed himself again. At the same time, he secretly vowed not to brag in front of Li Zixuan in the future, because Li Zixuan was poisonous. As long as he bragged in front of him, he would be instantly slapped in the face. Li Zixuan smiled again and said, "Brother Zhang, you've misunderstood again. The forging method I'm talking about is not the manual forging method you think it is, but a stamping machine with constant power and constant speed. It can ensure that the surface of the forged item is smooth and uniform." Stamping machine? There's such a magical weapon in the world? Why don't I know about it? Zhang Hongxing said excitedly. According to Li Zixuan's words, the stamping machine could be regarded as a magical weapon in the eyes of blacksmiths. After all, with this thing, there would be no need to hammer at a time to forge iron. Li Zixuan said, "This stamping machine is driven by water, so it can also be called a hydraulic stamping machine. But it hasn't been made yet. When it's done, it will definitely have this effect." Xiaoxi, go and invite Mr. Mo and Ink Girl over. Tell them that I have something to ask of them. Yes, young master. Song Xiaoxi took the order and left. Faubert then asked, Young master, you want to invite Mr. Mo over to make the hydraulic stamping machine you just mentioned? Li Zishuan nodded and said, Yes and no. It can only be said that it's not all of it. The hydraulic stamping machine is only a small part of the work. We now have a water wheel under the Ba River Dam. This thing can directly provide power for our machine. We just need to connect some transmission mechanisms on it. However, in addition to the hydraulic stamping machine, I also plan to make some other things. We'll talk about it when they come. The reason why Europe could make full-body plate armor in the Middle Ages was because of the hydraulic stamping machine. Li Zishuan wanted to make this thing last year, but he didn't have a dam at that time, so he couldn't make the hydraulic stamping machine. Now that the dam and hydropower station were all built, he could finally show his skills. Chapter 1424. Young Master, Mr. Mo and Miss Mo are here. Oh, young Master Yen is here too. Song Xiaoxi led Mo Huai and Mo Lingwei to Li Zishuan's office in the workshop. Surprisingly, Mo Lingwei was followed by Yen Xiaoning. Li Zishuan clicked his tongue in wonder, wondering if Yen Xiaoning had already settled his father-in-law, Mo Huai. Yamacho, I heard that you have some instructions for us? Mo Huai cupped his hands and said. Li Zishuan hurriedly greeted them. Mr. Mo, Ink Girl, please take a seat. I called you here because I plan to start a new round of technological innovation in our workshop. There are many aspects involved, and I need your help. Technological innovation? Then why didn't you call me Xiao? Yamacho? Yen Xiaoning was a little dissatisfied. Li Zishuan said unhappily, I didn't call you, but didn't you come here yourself? Besides, if I called Ink Girl, isn't that the same as calling you? Hey, what are you saying? Yen Xiaoning couldn't help but laugh. Mo Lingwei blushed and pinched Yen Xiaoning's arm hard. Ahem. Mo Huai's eyes were very sharp. How could he not notice these two's little movements? His old face immediately darkened. He coughed heavily and said, Yamacho, if there's anything you need us to do, just say it. I'll do my best. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Take a seat first. Let's sit down and talk. The few of them sat around a glass coffee table. Fortunately, Li Zishuan's office was big enough that it didn't seem crowded even with 7 or 8 people. After everyone sat down, Li Zishuan took out a few blueprints, spread them out, and said in a deep voice, Now we have a dam. Ladies and gentlemen, at present, not only do we have a dam, but we also have a water wheel. This water wheel is not only used to irrigate the farmland, but it can also provide power for the machinery. Actually, I don't need to say this, and all of you should understand. The first thing we need to do is to build a hydraulic press. This is the blueprint of the hydraulic press. After the press was completed, the water wheel needed to be modified into a power device that could be connected to the press. This was nothing more than adding some cranks and connecting rods for transmission. It was very simple. After the modification, the punching machine can be connected to the water wheel. Under the driving of the water wheel, it can replace human strength and repeatedly forge steel. Moreover, the impact force is almost the same every time. In terms of precision forging, the effectiveness of this thing is absolutely incomparable to human strength. Mo Huai looked at the drawing seriously. After a while, he nodded and said, Yamacho, there's no problem with the modification of the press machine and water wheel. Leave these two matters to this old man. Li Zishuan smiled. That's exactly what I was thinking. Mr. Mo has been involved in the Murky River project from the beginning to the end. Now that you're in charge of the hydraulic machine, that's the most suitable. Everyone in the workshop will do their best to assist you in this matter. Thank you, Yamacho. Mo Huai cupped his hands and said. Li Zixuan smiled and said, Brother Zhang, after the hydraulic press machine was completed, you will lead all the blacksmiths in the workshop to produce the plate armor I gave you. You will need to make at least 5,000 sets of such armor. Previously, Li Er had talked to him and said that he wanted to expand the black armored army from 3,000 to 5,000. After the expansion, the black armored army would need to upgrade their military equipment. These equipment would all be supplied by the Strange Taste Pavilion Workshop and must be made of vanadium steel. 5,000 sets? Marquis, did I hear wrongly? Zhang Hongxing's body trembled, and he almost fell off his chair. He opened his mouth wide in shock. The rest of the people in the office also looked at Li Zixuan in shock. Obviously, everyone was shocked by the news that Li Zixuan wanted to make 5,000 sets of armor. Yamacho, why do you want to make so many sets of armor? What if someone finds out? Then, after the shock, Mo Huai asked worriedly. Making military equipment without authorization was a capital offense. Li Zixuan said indifferently, Mr. Mo, don't panic. This is a task given by His Majesty. It's not against the law. Hearing this, Mo Huai felt a little relieved. Li Zixuan looked at Zhang Hongxing and said, Brother Zhang, these 5,000 sets of armor are not for you to make alone. You only need to teach the other blacksmiths how to make them. Zhang Hongxing quickly waved his hand and said, Marquis, that's not what I meant. I'm just worried that 5,000 sets of armor will require an astonishing amount of steel. I'm afraid that the workshop won't be able to bear it, especially vanadium steel. This material is so rare. Wouldn't it be a waste to use it to make armor? Li Zixuan couldn't help but laugh. You don't have to worry about this. I have iron mines, coal mines, and vanadium mines now. Besides, the Zhangsun family's iron mines can also support our workshop. Even if you make another 5,000 sets of armor, I can still bear it. The Turks in the north were a real threat to the Tang Empire. Li Zixuan could be considered a big family in the Tang Empire, and his family was living a happy life. He was determined not to allow the Turks to destroy his beautiful life. As long as he could get rid of the Turks, what was a little bit of steel? Li Zixuan's strategy was undoubtedly very wise. On the vast grassland, the use of infantry was very limited. Only the highly mobile cavalry could gallop freely on the grassland and achieve a surprise victory. The black armored army was the trump card of the Tang Empire's cavalry. Li Zixuan wanted these 5,000 black armored army to transform into 5,000 Iron Mans and sweep through the Turks' lair. At that time, the revamped black armored army would give the world a surprise. Zhang Hongxing finally understood the true foundation of the Strange Taste Pavilion Workshop. He clasped his fist and said, Since that's the case, I will do my best to lead all the blacksmiths in the workshop to make 5,000 sets of armor for Marquis in the shortest time possible. Li Zixuan nodded and said, That's great. Before the hydraulic press is completed, Brother Zhang can lead the blacksmiths to make 5,000 horse lances. All of them must be made of vanadium steel. In addition, we will also make a batch of horseshoes. The cavalry of the Tang Dynasty usually used horse lances as their weapons. They were longer than swords and were the most convenient weapon to use when charging. If they were made of vanadium steel, it would undoubtedly increase the sharpness of the lances. Against the Turks who wore simple leather armor, it would be as easy as cutting vegetables. As for the horseshoes, when his white horse was injured last year, he nailed horseshoes to it. However, he did not popularize it because there was a shortage of iron at that time. According to academic research, horseshoes first appeared in ancient Rome around the 1st century BC. These horseshoes were made of copper or iron and were shaped like the lower part of a horse's hoof. However, they were not fixed the same way as now. In addition to using short nails, they also needed to be tied with leather. It was similar to the Roman shoes worn by the ancient Roman soldiers. Hence, it was also known as horse sandals. In China's Dunhuang Mogao grottos, there was a painting of nailed horseshoes. It was built on the wall of Cave 302 in the 4th year of Sui Kai Huang, 584 AD. From the painting, a horse was standing and tied to a tree. A man was standing behind the horse, holding the horse's right hind leg. The horse's hoof was turned upside down. There was an oval-shaped horseshoe painted on the hoof. Therefore, some people speculated that there were horseshoes in China during the Sui dynasty. However, this theory lacked archaeological evidence to support it. Moreover, according to Zhao Rushi of the Southern Song dynasty in his book Zhu Fanji, it was recorded that the horses of Dashi used iron as shoes. This was very novel. This showed that horseshoes were not very popular in the Southern Song dynasty. Indeed, from the Qin and Han dynasties to the Tang and Song dynasties, horseshoes were not found in the Central Plains. It was not until the Yuan dynasty that horseshoes began to be used on a large scale. As for why there was a painting of nailed horseshoes from the Sui dynasty in the Dunhuang Mogao grottos, only the heavens knew. Horseshoes? What's that? Zhang Hongxing could not help but wonder. Li Zishuan took out a drawing and explained, "It's a shoe for the horse to wear. It prevents the horseshoes from cracking due to long-term wear and tear. It can greatly reduce the consumption of horses' fart. The appearance is like this. If you don't understand, you can go take a look at my white horse later. The horseshoes on its hooves have been installed for almost a year." Zhang Hongxing reacted and said happily, "Wearing shoes for the horse? Marquis, this is a good idea. In the past, I don't know how many horses I've seen crippled because of cracked hoof. With these horseshoes, it can prevent the horse's hooves from being damaged." Everyone was also amazed. Yan Xiaoning could not help but say, "TSK TSK, why didn't I notice that your white horse was wearing shoes before?" Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "That's because you're blind." Mo Lingwei could not help but laugh. However, when she saw Mo Huai's face darken, she quickly stopped laughing. "Oh, that's right. Other than the horseshoes, when the time comes, you can make a batch of horse armor. It doesn't need to be too thick. It just needs to be able to withstand ordinary swords and sabers." Li Zishuan looked at Zhang Hongxing and said, "As for horse armor, leather vest had already appeared during the Shang and Zhou dynasties. During the Three Kingdoms period, full horse armor began to appear. There was no need to give a blueprint for this thing. Li Zishuan believed that with Zhang Hongxing's knowledge, he could definitely make it. Hearing this, everyone could not help but gasp. Vanadium steel plate armor, vanadium steel horse lance, horseshoes, and horse armor. Was Li Zishuan planning to build a super steel cavalry that was armed to the teeth? They believed that such a terrifying cavalry would give even the Turkic wolf cavalry a headache. This was because this was a cavalry that was invincible in both offense and defense. Gulp. No matter how stupid Zhang Hongxing was, he understood that Li Zishuan wanted to play a big game. He swallowed his saliva and replied with difficulty, "Yes, Marquis." Li Zishuan nodded. He took out the wind-chasing sword and handed it to Zhang Hongxing. "All right, there's nothing else for you to do. Take this wind-chasing sword first." Zhang Hongxing was pleasantly surprised. This time, he didn't dare to use one hand to receive it. Instead, he used both hands to forcefully receive it. He then bowed to Li Zishuan and said, "Many thanks for your trust, Marquis. 3 days later, this Zhang will definitely return this wind-chasing sword intact. This Zhang will take his leave now." Li Zishuan nodded and hummed in agreement. He was not worried that Zhang Hongxing would run away with the sword. After all, Zhang Crow's reputation was there. A monk could run away, but the temple could not, right? Mr. Wang, Ink Girl, although the hydropower station's generator can operate normally, the copper core used in the coils is not pure copper. This will greatly affect the generator's efficiency. Therefore, I plan to build a second-generation generator with a high-purity copper core to upgrade the current generator. After Zhang Hongxing left, Li Zixuan looked at Wang Ji and Mo Lingwei. High-purity copper core? Yamacho, it is inevitable that there will be impurities in the copper. How are we going to purify it? Wang Ji frowned and asked. Mo Lingwei also looked at Li Zixuan. Although she was good at physics, she was not weak in chemistry. After all, smart people learned everything quickly. She had read the Academy's chemistry textbook more than once. Li Zixuan replied in a deep voice, "Electrolytic refining. Now that we have electricity, we can use electrolytic refining to remove the impurities in the copper and obtain high-purity brass. The specific steps are very simple. We will use a copper sheet as the anode and sulfuric acid and bile alumina as the electrolyte. When electricity is applied, the copper on the anode will dissolve and enter the solution. The copper in the solution will then precipitate at the cathode. During this process, other than copper, there will also be impurities such as iron and zinc. Because iron and zinc are more flexible than copper, they can replace the copper in the electrolyte and precipitate copper at the cathode. When the metal is less flexible than copper, it will not dissolve and will form anode mud. This way, the copper precipitated at the cathode will be very pure." "I see. This old man understands." Wang Ji thought for a moment and nodded with a smile. Li Zixuan sighed and said, "That's good. We need to build an electrolytic workshop in the workshop as soon as possible to refine copper." "Yes, Yamacho." Wang Ji cupped his hands and replied. Li Zixuan looked at Mo Lingwei and said, "Ink girl, other than upgrading the generator, I also want you to help me make an electric motor." "Electric motor? What's an electric motor?" Mo Lingwei was puzzled. Li Zixuan took out a thick stack of drawings and said, "The generator uses the principle of magnetism to generate electricity, and the electric motor uses the principle of electromagnetism. The general process is that the coil will generate a rotating magnetic field and act on the rotor to form a magneto-electric force rotation torque. Thus, the rotor will constantly rotate. The details are very clear in these drawings. Ink girl, if you have any questions, you can ask me at any time." Mo Lingwei said happily, "Okay, Yamacho." "Hey, Yamacho Wei is just a girl. Do you have the heart to let her do so many things by herself?" Yan Xiaoning could not help but ridicule. Mo Lingwei glared at Yan Xiaoning and said, "I'm willing to do this. You can't blame Yamacho." Li Zixuan could not help but laugh and said, "Ha ha, Xiaoning. If you can't bear it, you can help Ink girl more. You two are colleagues now, so you should help each other." After saying that, he looked at Mo Huai quietly. The latter's face was tense, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. Li Zixuan could not help but mutter in his heart, "Has Yan Xiaoning settled Mo Huai or not?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.